My friends didn't invite me to their wedding, then made me the bad guy when I couldn't attend at the last minute. Original post. Sorry for the long story. I added a TL.dr. I'm definitely looking for advice, but it comes with a backstory. A friend, Greg 28, in my circle of friends met Shannon 28 about 5 years ago, and they immediately hit it off. Everybody instantly fell in love with Shannon because she's friendly and really fun to hang out with. They were everybody's favorite couple and really made our hangouts much more fun. We all knew they were perfect for each other. They both made our crew that much better. The engagement was expected, but much welcome news. Our friend's circle was buzzing about the inevitable wedding. Then the invitations went out. You know those save the date magnets that people send out? Well, it really sucked seeing them on everybody else's fridge when I visited friends knowing I didn't get one and wasn't invited. Feeling left out really sucks. But it gets worse. I completely understand how stressful wedding planning is, and I believe nobody should feel that they have to invite people they don't want to their wedding. It's their day and their ceremony, and they shouldn't have to have people there who they don't want there. I didn't cause a fuss or express to anyone that I was hurt, that I felt excluded from the wedding and by extension, excluded from the group. I didn't want to be looked on in an even worse way that I feel I was apparently being looked at. But one friend actually stood up for me. When their wedding came up in conversation and people talked about booking flights and rooms, destination wedding in New York City. Eventually I was asked if I had booked yet. I said, me and my girlfriend, weren't invited. Nobody could believe it, but I insisted that I wasn't upset because I know how situations like this can go. I didn't want to cause trouble because then the happy couple might resent me. Then I'd be the bad guy. I heard through other friends that my friend Tracy thought it was really messed up that I wasn't invited. She and I never spoke of how I wasn't invited to the wedding, but she really felt a certain way about it. So a month before the destination wedding, I got a text from Greg basically saying sorry for forgetting to send an invite, but that they would love to have us come to the wedding. It was way too late at that point for me. I couldn't get away from my job, and I didn't have a chance to put money aside for a year for an expensive NYC destination wedding like everyone else did. I didn't even get a save the date. Every flight and hotel, no rooms where everyone else was staying, obviously. Too late for that, was unaffordable for me. I texted him back that I couldn't make it. The wedding came and went, and I felt bad about everything. I saw the Facebook pictures of my friends all having the time of their lives. It looked like a great wedding. There's even a picture of just the group of friends labeled the crew. I don't think I've ever felt so left out, honestly. It really made me feel worthless and unwanted. So naturally the typical thought surfaced. They don't like you. They think you're annoying. They think you're an asshole. If you can't identify the schmuck in a group of friends, that means you're it. They think you try way too hard to be nice and think you're a phony. Then, as if it couldn't get any worse, Shannon messaged me on Facebook asking why I didn't RSVP and said they missed me at the wedding. RSVP. RSVP. Doesn't one have to be invited in order to RSVP? Everybody got a year to prepare between getting save the dates and actual wedding invitations. I got a text message a month before the wedding. Just as I feared, I'm being made out to be the bad guy, and I even made a point to keep my feelings to myself and play it cool. But as usual, I didn't say this to her because I know how I would end up looking. I actually apologized for, I don't even know. But I made a point to mention how I spoke with Greg about it. I also made sure to compliment the wedding pictures and say it looked like fun. I did everything I could in that conversation to make it easier on her, and of course now I feel like a total schmuck. That was this past summer, and I haven't seen them since. I feel like that's it for me in the group now. I see some of the friends in our group every now and then, but everything feels different now. None of them even responded to my birthday party Facebook invite this month. I feel like things are being said behind the scenes, and I feel completely out of the loop. It felt like a passive-aggressive message that maybe Greg and Shannon never actually liked me. My fiancé gets along great with Shannon, and she's just confused. Seeing her confusion just makes my heart break even more because she's a sweetheart who's never offended anybody in her life. I wish I could break it to her that I'm just the guy in the group that Greg and Shannon think sucks, but I don't know how, and I feel like a complete loser who deserves this. I'll always appreciate Tracy for sticking up for me. She may never know how awesome it feels hearing about how she told everybody it was messed up that I was left out. I haven't even spoken to her about how the whole thing made me feel, or anybody for that matter. Reddit, you are the first to hear about it, because I didn't want it to appear like I'm making a stink and become even more disliked. This whole thing just fucking sucks. I feel like I don't have friends anymore. And to make it worse, soon I'll have a wedding of my own, and I'm afraid I won't have any friends there, except for Tracy, of course. How am I supposed to handle who I invite so it doesn't seem like I'm leaving people out for petty revenge? How the hell do I navigate a toxic situation that I had no hand in creating? I still feel like I'm in the dark or could be overreacting. What the hell? TL.ER, friends forgot or chose not to invite me to their wedding. After a friend stuck up for me, I was invited via text message, with little notice, had to decline, then asked why I didn't RSVP and that I was missed. Soon I'll have my own wedding to plan and don't feel like I have any friends to invite, don't know if I should invite certain people, don't know how to even approach the situation I didn't create. Relevant comments, deleted. Dude, you clearly tell them you are not respected like the others. Cut them out, this is about self-respect. Find new friends, don't turn back. OOP, thanks for reading and responding. Yeah, I've been thinking, I guess I can have my younger brother be the best man and just not have groomsmen, considering the circumstances. It's just fucked how I did everything I could to avoid looking like the bad guy, yet here we are. I'm the bad guy regardless of anything I did. Doc. Just that totally sucks. I would be hurt too. Do you think maybe Greg was in charge of sending invites to his friends and forgot? Or it got lost in the mail? I had an invite returned to me 1 month after I sent it, but thankfully I'd sent a save the date and sent my invite super early, so it ended up being fine, but if I hadn't, one of my cousins might have incorrectly thought she was excluded. It sounds like Shannon, at least, thought you were sent an invite if she was upset you didn't RSVP. You actually did RSVP by texting Greg back, but it sounds like she thought you'd been sent an RSVP response card. OOP. Yeah, it could just be a simple misunderstanding, but word seemed to get around early that I didn't get a save the date and even later didn't get an invite either. Tracy especially seemed to make sure everybody was aware that she wasn't happy about my exclusion. The other friends I spoke to didn't even suggest that it could have been a mistake, almost like they knew something I didn't but didn't feel comfortable saying it. Only one person even spoke up on my behalf. Update. I half took everyone's advice and brought it up with Tracy. She just confirmed that Shannon was full of shit when she asked me why she didn't get my RSVP and wanted to absolve herself of guilt. I'm not sure if they forgot or if I just wasn't invited yet, but Tracy said we'd talk about it more tonight when she gets out of work. Final update. I spoke about it in depth with Tracy. It turns out Greg's best man, someone who was never in the gang but grew up with Greg, always hated me and Greg thinks I'm annoying. Shannon later felt bad they chose not to invite me and pressured him to invite me over text knowing I wouldn't be able to make it. Also, it wasn't only Tracy who thought it was wrong that I didn't get an invite, and the chatter is what made Shannon ask me why I didn't RSVP, to make it seem like my invite was lost in the mail. It feels better knowing this because, like I said, they don't have to have people they don't want at their wedding. But knowing Greg doesn't like me fucking hurts because I always thought we were friends. Turns out he's the phony. Unfortunately, everybody else, except for Tracy and a few others, liked Greg more than me, so they kinda felt like they had to choose a side after Tracy. And a few others, it turns out, brought up why I didn't get invited. Lots of people are feeling guilty about this, apparently. They still felt like they had to choose a side for whatever reason. Probably because most of them went to high school with Greg. Oh well, that's life. Thanks for the advice about being more assertive. Those of you who were polite about it were very helpful. Thanks. Relevant comments, deleted. Yeah, you don't need those two-faced assholes in your life. Congratulations on finding out before they borrowed money from you. When they get divorced, you can reach out to Greg and tell him that he deserves it. OP, it's funny you bring up borrowing money because they're the type who always want to split the check when they order the most expensive shit and always say, I'll get you back. And I don't trust Venmo. I'll just give you cash when I go to the ATM, and don't. On the plus side, I don't have to pay for part of their steak and lobster dinners anymore. Will OOP invite Greg, Shannon and the best man to his wedding? I don't think it would be right to force anybody to choose sides, because that feels inappropriate to do to friends. I think everybody who stood up for me gets an invite. Greg can have his best man and be the cynical bastards they are together. Honestly, nobody really likes the best man all that much because he's always acted like an obnoxious asshole when he's been around us. They can have each other when told to talk to Greg directly and get it from the source, actually got confirmation, and an apology, from someone else. Not everybody was cool with it, but she's the only one who really has a spine and spoke up for me. Turns out they fucked up and caused all kinds of drama between people in the group. Some people wanted to keep me out of the loop so I wouldn't feel insulted. I kinda get it, but it just makes me appreciate Tracy more. Final comments from OOP Ryra Jin. In this situation you aren't the bad guy from my perspective, and to be honest, a destination wedding is a dick move on your friend's part. The sheer inconvenience of one is like dick move supreme. Especially the fact they chose NYC, WTF. Plus some people turn into assholes after marriage, and statistically speaking, your married male friend is going to be spending more time with his wife now than his friends. In some ways marriage is like high school. You go to it with your friends for a little while, then you start to drift away from another by barely communicating. OOP Shannon is from up there and she wanted to be closer to her family. Yeah, it turns out they didn't want me there and felt pressured once some of my friends realized. I guess it was easier to make the decision when it was just the two of them and they lost confidence in the choice when people found out. Ryrajin, I feel it's best to let the consequences of this affect them, and just move on. OOP. Yeah. Hopefully they learn from this and aren't such assholes in the future. I don't see Greg ever changing from the cynical and negative guy he is, but you never know. My husband asked me to flash road workers. I did and he became furious and pushed me out of the car. Was he being a jerk? Original post. Been together 10 years, married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years he's started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn, so I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual, so if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated I'll try it. He just says duly noted, and carries on with his day, which is frustrating. A few nights ago we had friends round for tea and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says we've found a way to make it more entertaining though, haven't we? To her husband, and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with the groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups and they are normally going 10 to 15 miles per hour, so when they get near one of the groups he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook, and he said yes, and we even had sex that night for the first time in months and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning we were both at work and as soon as he woke up he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure and it wasn't just horny talk and what if the men don't want to be flashed. He said he's sure and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a group of workmen and my husband gets all giddy and says, "Are you ready?" I say yes and he says now. And beeps his horn and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles per hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting, "Get out you fucking slag." I start crying and he's leaning over me opening my car door and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The cars behind are beeping as he's stopped traffic and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them and I do. He pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out of the car and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out of the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in it. They took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heater on and made me a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and then seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea, but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they are used to it, but I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were also sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone, but I don't know anyone's number apart from work and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could just ring a taxi, but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man I'm assuming was their team leader told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go, so I asked if I could go to my mom's house about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van and 2 of them drove me to my mom's and they were really sweet and made sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mom answered I was hysterical and crying and they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mom offered them a drink and I tried to give them their coat and boots back, but they said it's okay. I told my mom we were driving to McDonald's and got into an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mom's. My husband had been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he doesn't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout, "Nice pair," and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave, he is obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50, but if I do stay, I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy either for him or both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away over a few seconds of madness, and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash, as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jackets and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. TLDR, husband wanted me to flash, I did, he then physically pushed me out of the car but says he's sorry. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I don't think any relationship advice will do anything to help your situation. Nor will couples counseling. This is definitely the sort of situation where couples counseling will only escalate problematic abusive behavior. What you need, quite frankly, is a divorce lawyer. OOP, that's the thought that's becoming more prevalent in my mind. I took pics of the bruises and scuffs on my arms and legs afterwards, and I kept looking at them and thinking, what would I say to anyone else who showed me them? Commenter 2, you sound codependent on him and do everything he tells you to do to please him, because you are terrified that he will leave you. Now you are in a situation where you did what he told you to do, but he ditched you anyway. He left you on the side of the road to the mercy of strangers that you just flashed with nothing on you. That was very dangerous, and it makes me question if he wanted something to happen to you. This relationship isn't safe for you anymore, and that probably will be for some time. He's abusive. He doesn't want to do couples counseling, because he knows what they would tell you. It isn't wise to do that with him anyway, because all that therapy is going to teach him are more weak points for you to take advantage of. Look for therapy for yourself. You know that he doesn't love you, that's why you accept all these behaviors of him. You can't make him love you by accepting his disrespect. You need to leave. It won't get better, it will get worse. Update. I took people's advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail but told him he couldn't stay at my house, so he's gone to his mum's. After the argument, he told all our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened. Plus pictures of my injuries, including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he's sent admitting he asked me to flash, and admitting he hit me, although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they are supposed to sound. I've spoken a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment. TLDR, I informed the police about the assault and he had to leave my house. Relevant comments. OOP on the workers who rescued her. OOP. Luckily the road worker was a big strong guy. He picked me up and got me out of the way like I was as light as a feather. That's the bit that plays on my mind the most. He drove off a split second after I was out of the car and the door was still open. I think in his mind I was still half in the car when he drove off. Can OP go to a safe place and away from her husband? OP, I don't think I need protection. My brother is staying with me now and he could beat up 10 of my husbands with one hand. Plus I feel like there's more deserving people than me who need a charity's help. OOP telling the police what happened and how they have responded. OP, I did tell the police exactly what happened, as did the workmen. Believe it or not, the police didn't care about me showing flesh and cared more about me getting beaten up and nearly ran over. Am I the asshole for telling my sister I don't know if I love her after finding out about her 5-year affair? Original post. My sister, 32, moved in with me because she got pregnant 5 months ago from what she claimed was a one-night stand. I love my sister, so of course, I took her in. My husband is overseas for 6 more months, so it was nice to have her around because I care about her very much. On Monday, I came home and saw my sister and a strange woman in a screaming match on my doorstep. I obviously didn't know what was happening, but I saw the woman poking my pregnant sister's shoulder, so I intervened. I sent my sister inside, and she begged me to send the woman away. I didn't understand what was going on, but I wanted the altercation to end for everyone's sake, so I told the woman as much. Then she started screaming, asking me if I was also sleeping with her husband. I was like. And then she basically revealed that my sister had been having an affair with her husband for 5 years. 5 years. She had everything printed out, chats, photos, emails, receipts. It was disturbing to see, and I didn't want to go through it all. But a few things were established. My sister knew about his wife. She knew she was the mistress and liked it. This woman was a stay-at-home mom to their 4 kids, one of whom has a severe disability from a car accident. Her husband knew about my sister's pregnancy and even took her on a baby moon to celebrate it. The affair had been going on the entire time, with my sister believing he would eventually leave his wife for her. My sister had fully embraced the role of being the other woman, and was emotionally invested in their relationship, despite his repeated lies about leaving his wife. I told the woman I was very sorry and that I obviously didn't know, but I asked her to leave because this wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't want the neighbors to call the police. She was furious but gave me her number on a post-it, begging me not to let her husband stay at my house. I assured her that no man was stepping foot in my home. My sister was begging me not to believe the woman, calling her a vindictive ex-wife. I told her, all right then, let's look up the marriage online. Let's see if a motion for dissolution of marriage was ever submitted. We fought hard. My sister kept saying I would never understand and that they loved each other, but he just couldn't leave his wife, blah blah blah. I called her dumb and naive. The next day, I told her she could stay here because I didn't want her to become a financial burden on that woman in any way, but I also told her that right now, I didn't want to engage with her. My sister asked me if I still loved her, and I told her honestly, right now, I can't say I do. I will always help my nephew and not endanger you, but I can't like you because you've shown me you're not a trustworthy person. I told her I didn't trust her not to try anything with my husband, and I didn't trust her with anything at all, so I made her sign a tenants agreement. She's been begging me to forgive her, and I told her there's nothing to forgive. I just don't know who she is anymore. AITA. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA, you need to make sure she is out of your home before your husband comes home, because you are right, you cannot trust her. OP, I wouldn't worry. I trust my husband 100%. Not my sister anymore though. I already told him and asked if she ever did something and he said no. Commenter, NTA, your sister's behavior was vile and inexcusable. That poor woman and her children. Her husband is an absolute POS. OP, I said the affair started 5 years ago, right? Now guess when she wife and the kid got into an accident that left the kid disabled. Commenter, and your sister knew? She's a despicable person and I'm amazed how strong you are for still keeping her housed with you. NTA. OOP. She met the flicking kids. Took them to the zoo with the bastard. Commenter. Wow, that is severely ballsy. OOP. She wanted them to get to know her so she could hop right into the mom role as soon as he divorced his wife. Yeah right. OOP's parents. They died 7 years ago. Commenter. You should ask for pics so you know what this guy looks like, and arrange to get outdoor cameras at the least so your sis isn't sneaking him around when you're at work. It should be grounds for eviction if she does allow him around. OOP, I saw him in the pictures his wife showed me. Also I work from home ATM. So no dice why OOP lets her live with OOP. One of my reasons is that I don't want her to get an apartment on his dime when that money should go to his kids. Also, my nephew doesn't deserve to be born homeless. OOP expands. She pays me no rent. So if he gives her money there is nothing that I can do. But living on his dime in an apartment he would pay for and possibly put in his name. Dangerous. Commenter. Just curious, what does your husband say about this situation? OOP. He said that it is very disappointing she turned out to be like that and said that it is difficult to trust her as she proved to be such a good liar. She is the one who helped me with the tenancy agreement and all. Commenter. Downvoted? Yeah, that whole thing might just be so that she has tenant rights so that she can try to ruin your fucking life. OP, listen, you don't know which country I'm from. We got legal help and did this together with someone that actually has a clue. We saved our asses like this. If not that, would be akin to squatters' rights in the US. Commenter. OP, what are you going to do once the baby is here? Assuming the dad wants to be in the kid's life at least somewhat, I think it's unreasonable to ban him from the house. OOP. If she wants him there she can get her very own apartment. If she still wants to stay and save up for the baby she has to adhere to my house rules. She is free to go and see an outside. To another commenter. I put up my rules. If she wants to stay she has to adhere to them. She has been told. She still has 4 months to make that decision. If she wants him physically with her after birth she can do that. But not in my house. How the wife got OOP's address. She got the address from BIS phone update post. First, I'd like to clarify a few things. I am not going to tell my sister to get rid of the baby, that's not my place, and I would never suggest such a thing. Also, I am not going to install tracking software on her phone or demand access to all her devices. That's invasive and wrong. I've been thinking a lot, and while I can't say that I don't love my sister, it's very hard to feel that love right now. I don't know who she is anymore. It's not just that she lied to me, it's what she did and how convinced she is that she was justified because they were in love. She's brought chaos into my home that I opened up to her. I'm deeply disappointed in her, and I just don't like her at the moment. I'm letting her stay with me because I don't want her to become dependent on him. I don't think he's a good man either, and as a social worker, I've seen these scenarios too many times. My sister is already deluded. I don't need to open the door to a dependency that's also financial. Now, on to the update. I haven't been punishing my sister, but I've been treating her like a roommate. This is driving her crazy. She's begging me to go back to how things were before, but I can't. I told her that I need time and that things can't just return to normal overnight. She tried to explain how it all happened. She admitted that she always knew he was married but believed she could tell how unhappy he was and felt he deserved to be happy. They met at a bar a few weeks after his son's accident. He told her that his wife hadn't touched him since it happened and that he was about to explode. I asked her why she would involve herself with a married man, knowing the hurt it would cause. She said she wanted to be a wife and a good mom, and that included his kids. She had hoped he would divorce his wife so they could all move on and finally be happy together. I just stared at her, unable to comprehend how she could rationalize her actions. A few days later, he appeared at our house, claiming he had left his wife and wanted to be with my sister. I told him to leave immediately or I would call the police. My sister was furious with me, accusing me of ruining her chance at happiness. I made it clear to her. If he comes over again, I will evict her. She's free to date anyone she wants, but not under my roof. I also told her that if she plans to have him around after the baby is born, she'll need to find her own place. Word has gotten around our community about the affair. While we were grocery shopping, a woman even spat on my sister. Many of her friends have cut ties with her, calling her a home wrecker. Some are married themselves and don't want her near their husbands. I haven't said I told you so even once. We unexpectedly ran into his wife at a local cafe. My sister wanted to apologize and suggested that maybe they could all have a good relationship for the sake of the kids. The wife laughed coldly and said, "You made your choices, now live with them. Don't expect me to make this easier for you." My sister is devastated and has been lying in bed ever since. I'm taking care of her physical needs, making sure she eats, stays hydrated and attends her prenatal appointments, but I can't bring myself to comfort her emotionally. I just don't have it in me right now. OOP's comments. Commenter, is your sister mentally sound? She seems to be living in a fantasy world. NTAOOP, I don't think she is having a psychotic break. I think she is in too far, and now that she has destroyed her life, she is trying to make it work. Commenter, to get in this far she can't be a good person, and neither can he. They're both so insanely selfish that they put getting laid over destroying his kid's family and home. I feel horribly for that child, its parents are trash. OOP, that has also been my thoughts. Commenter. I asked the last time and wasn't answered. How did your sister make it to like 32, IARC, and wasn't living with you? Was she working? Why did she immediately stop working the second she found out she was pregnant? If she didn't, why did she give up her apartment and move in with you? A 32 years old living alone had some way to support herself, and people don't just quit their jobs overnight because they got pregnant unless it's because they are in a stable relationship and the partner was willing to support them, in which case again moving in with you would not be necessary. You talk about not being financially dependent on him, but now she's financially dependent on you? Why would you agree to allow her to become financially dependent on you, and why would you accept the cost of caring for an adult and her child just because it's your sister? If she is not working, she should absolutely not have the kid, and you should absolutely not be bearing the brunt of her bad decisions. OP, I had quite a few, so I don't believe I read yours, or at least not fully. I answered someone who asked something similar. Yes, she has a job. She moved in with me to save up for her baby. She is on maternity leave. Her job is not super high paying. I am not responding to the rest of the comment as it seems more aggressive than helpful. To a downvoted comment saying that's not how maternity leave works in the US, good thing we are not in the US. Neither the UK. To another, ruder commenter. Yeah, you get 100% of the pay for 6 months, after that 80% or something like that for 6 more months, and I think 50% if you go over a year. Also notice how I said not super high paying. Commenter, I was spit on multiple times growing up because I was a bastard. I received a lot of hate because my brother was an unwed teen mom. Random people, teachers, churchgoers, a good chunk of the so-called family. Small towns suck more than I can say. OP, they go pretty hard in the name of Jesus. Hypocrites of you ask me when asked where OP lives, I won't say. But we are quite religious here. Old women think they are the law and all that. Commenter, holy shit, someone spit on her? What are you people, Amish? Ooh p. Catholic commenter. He appeared at our house, claiming he had left his wife and wanted to be with my sister. Huh. Sure, he left his wife after 5 years, coincidentally at the moment she discovered everything. I'm completely sure it's not the wife who dumped him. Per SOOP. I think the same thing. Commenter, your sister really is a piece of work. What did she expect would happen once news of the affair got out? If it weren't for the fact that she's pregnant, I wouldn't have put it past someone to do more than spit at her. The child is going to grow up hated by affair partners, soon to be ex and their children. OOP, I think worse is coming to her. I know our town. That's why she mostly stays in right now. Someone alleges OOP is only blaming the sister and not the affair partner. I blame him. He is a horrible man with no morals. He couldn't even wait for his son to be out of the hospital to start an affair because his ballpark wasn't getting scratched by his wife, who was also in the accident. I hate him. I hate him so badly that I resent that he exists. But he is not in my life. I didn't know him. He has no cards in my game. I am so mad at my sister for not opke fucking up her life but also bringing chaos in mine after I opened my home to her. I am mad she lied to me for 5 years, but most of all, I am disgusted with her horrible selfish actions. She wasn't lured into this. She knew from the beginning that she was a mistress. She knew what she was doing. She knew it was wrong, and yet she kept doing it and lying through her teeth. I don't know who she is. New update. Post, my sister just won't stop talking about him. Every day it's the same story. Their perfect future together, the apartment they're moving into, how everything will be great once his divorce is done. She's completely lost in this delusion, acting like none of the lies and betrayal matter. I can't stand it. She made him write me letters. Yes, actual letters. As if that's going to magically make me approve of him. She leaves them around the house, thinking that if I just read them, I'll suddenly understand how sorry he is and how much he loves her. I haven't responded to a single one. It's ridiculous. I told her over and over that I don't want anything to do with him, but she keeps pushing, as if she can wear me down. It's beyond frustrating. Then came the talk of moving in together. She sat me down and asked for my blessing, telling me how important it was to her that I support their relationship. She actually wanted me to meet him, to give him a chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's when I drew the line. I told her flat out, if she moves in with him, I'm done. I told her I would go low contact, that I wouldn't be part of their life and that she's on her own if she goes through with this. If she wanted my support, she had to leave him, full stop. For a moment, I thought she was finally getting it. She showed me screenshots from his ex-wife. The ex had pretended she wanted him back, and this guy fell for it immediately. He told her how much he missed her. How my sister was a mistake. How he wanted to fix things with his family. My sister was crushed. She came to me with the screenshots, crying, and I thought, for a couple of days, that maybe, just maybe, she would finally see him for who he really is. I was hopeful. But then, as usual, he wormed his way back in. He told her he only said those things because he was afraid his ex would take the kids away, and of course, she bought it. Now she's actively moving in with him, packing up her things and making all these plans like nothing happened. The screenshots. Forgotten. The lies. Excused. She's determined to be with him no matter what, and I'm done. I told her I'm not helping her anymore. No more driving her to appointments. No more checking on her. Nothing. I'm not going to pretend everything's okay while she's diving headfirst into this disaster. Now I barely talk to her. If she asks where the tea is, I'll tell her. If she wants to know if there's milk left, I'll answer. But that's it. I'm emotionally cut off, and I told her straight. I'll be here if things fall apart, if she's in danger, but I am not going to be a part of this train wreck. She's on her own now. The community backlash hasn't slowed down either. Everywhere we go people are whispering, staring and judging. They're not just looking at her, they're looking at me too. People know she's living with me and I've started hearing comments at work about why I haven't completely cut her off. It's affecting my life now, and I just can't carry her mistakes anymore. Her friends? All gone. The ones who were married have cut ties completely. She's isolated herself, but instead of waking up, she's clinging harder to him. Holding on to this fantasy that everything will work out. But I'm done caring. She's made her choice and now she has to live with the fallout. This is the final update because I'm finished. I'm done trying, done caring, done dealing with the mess she's made. She can have her life with him, but I'm not going to be part of it. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Let her be, kick her out sooner. This started to affect your life more than her. OOP. She is leaving by the 23rd latest. To another commenter. Contracts have been terminated. She is out by the 23rd commenter. She'll lose him as she got him. You'll hear from her in the future when he cheats on her. OOP. I give it 3 months. Commenter. I don't blame you for being over this whole mess. As my mom would say, I won't be shitting out what you eat. Meaning, the consequences of your sister's actions are for her and her alone to deal with. You've been a good sister and done all you can to make her see the error of her ways. Now you just have to let the chips fall where they may. I'm nosy, can you come back and tell us her sob story when she comes crawling back? Oop, I like that idiom. I don't know. Maybe if I need to vent. But I hope that this is the last of my involvement. Commenter. Yeah, last update I predicted things wouldn't change and she would just start affecting you too, and now even indirectly she's affecting you socially. So I know she's not gonna leave without you kicking her out, hopefully you see that sooner than later, good luck. OP, I think she is thrilled about leaving to finally be with him lol. Commenter, I knew a woman like OP's sister, the man never left his wife. He never got a place with the woman I knew. She's alone, he's still with his wife. OOP, I don't think his wife is taking him back. Commenter, NTA your sister is reaching rock bottom, it's now up to her to get out or go further down. It's pathetic she can't face reality, maybe because she intentionally lost everything and everyone because of her selfish choices. For your sake it's best to maintain low to no contact. OOP, it's sad for my nephew. But he has 2 parents now. I am concentrated on my life now. OOP's final thoughts. Commenter, when it happens come back and tell us please. I want to see how things will fall apart. Don't delete your account, keep just for this, please. OP, I don't think I will. People are seriously unkind. I just got 2 death threats from my DMs. One for being a shifty sister and the other for housing a homewrecker. My family kicked me out because my sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring. 3 years later, they discovered it in the garbage disposal. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here goes. I'm Elliot, 26 years old, and 3 years ago my life was flipped upside down by a false charge made by my older sister, Gemma, 29. I grew up in a little Ohio town with my parents, John, 55M, and Lisa, 53F, and my sister, Gemma. We lived in a modest 2-story house that my parents purchased when they first married. It was not fancy, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we got all we needed. Growing up, Gemma and I were quite close. We'd spend hours playing in our backyard, climbing the ancient oak tree and inventing complicated games. She was always the leader, making up the rules and plots, while I was content to follow along. As we grew older, however, things began to alter. Gemma was always an overachiever. She was the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and appeared to thrive in whatever she tried. In contrast, I was more laid back. I performed okay in school, but I was never as motivated as Gemma. As we approached our adolescence, this disparity began to erode our relationship. By the time Gemma left for college, we had grown apart. She attended a prominent university on a scholarship, whilst I stayed local and attended community college. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I took a range of classes to figure it out. Gemma relocated to the city after graduating from college and began working at a large marketing agency. She'd return home for holidays and occasional weekends, full of stories about her fascinating life and excellent profession. I couldn't help feeling inferior in contrast. I was still living at home, working part-time at the local grocery shop, and trying to figure out my next step. Despite our differences, I always assumed Gemma and I were fine. We weren't as close as we were, but I assumed it was just part of growing up. I had no idea how quickly everything might fall apart. Gemma and her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, were engaged 3 years ago. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was ecstatic. Tom was a lawyer from a wealthy family, and my parents idolized him. He proposed with a stunning diamond ring that has been in his family for generations. Gemma was overjoyed and couldn't stop showing it off to everyone. The engagement celebration was a large occasion. My parents brought what seemed like the entire town to our house to celebrate. I recall feeling a little out of place among the rich people Gemma and Tom had invited from the city. I remained close to my old high school pals who were still in town, feeling more at ease with them than with Gemma's sophisticated set. A month after the engagement, all hell broke out. It was Tuesday afternoon and I had the day off work. I was in my room, playing video games and enjoying the quiet house. Gemma was visiting for a week, taking some time off work to begin arranging the wedding with our mother. I heard Gemma return home from a shopping trip with Mom. They were talking and laughing downstairs. I didn't think much about it and returned to my game. Around an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to check what was going on, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She explained that she took it off while doing dishes and left it on the kitchen counter. When she returned to grab it was gone. I was stunned and quickly denied taking it, but Gemma refused to listen. She kept shrieking that I was the only other one in the home, so it must have been me. She mentioned how I was always jealous of her success and how I probably wanted to sell the ring so I could finally move out and accomplish something with my life. Our parents arrived home in the midst of the chaos, and Gemma recounted her version of events. To my horror, they believed her wholeheartedly. My mother began to cry, questioning how I could have done such a thing to my own sister. My father merely looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. They began searching my room and turned everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but they did discover some money I had saved from my job at the supermarket. It wasn't much, maybe a few hundred, but Gemma quickly picked up on it, claiming I must have sold the ring and that's where the money came from. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was considering taking some classes at the local community college, but no one listened. The following few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma repeatedly pressed me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to contact the police if I did not come clean. I was afraid and felt entirely alone. Nobody in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I tried contacting several of my pals, but the majority of them had moved away after high school. The few who remained in town appeared unwilling to become engaged in family strife. I felt more alone than ever. After a week of relentless accusations and threats, my parents made a decision that would alter my life forever. They told me I needed to go. They said they couldn't trust me longer and that I was putting shame on the family. They gave me 2 days to pack my belongings and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best buddy from high school, Ryan, 26M, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered to let me rest on his couch for a time. But I knew I couldn't stay there long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed everything I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, including clothes, books, my laptop, and a few memories from brighter times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma eyeing me from her old bedroom window. I thought I caught a glint of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned aside. Walking out of that house, the only one I'd ever known, was the most difficult thing I had ever done. I felt deceived and abandoned by those who were supposed to love me completely. The saddest part was that I had done nothing wrong. For the next 2 months, I alternated between Ryan's couch and cheap motels as I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find to make ends meet. I've worked as a dishwasher, dog walker, and even spent a few weeks on a construction job. It was a challenge, but I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I got a solid job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The job was hard, the hours were long, but the pay was consistent. The salary wasn't spectacular, but it allowed me to rent a modest room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. I gradually began rebuilding my life, but the grief of what had happened never went away. I'd lie awake at night, repeating the events in my memory and wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have turned against me so quickly? How could Gemma, who had grown up with me and knew me better than anyone else, believe I would do such a thing? I cut all communication with my family. They attempted to contact me several times in the beginning. My mother would leave heartfelt voicemails urging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few terse text messages indicating we needed to discuss. Gemma did show up at the warehouse once, but I declined to see her. I couldn't bear to speak with them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For 3 years this was how I lived. I made new friends at work and in my shared home. We'd hang out after shifts, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was mine, and I had created it from scratch. I worked hard and was even promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started attending online classes to learn business management. I was slowly deciding what I wanted to accomplish with my life, but there was always a part of me that was outraged and wounded by what had occurred. I missed my previous life and family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was challenging. When I saw families shopping together or heard Christmas music, I felt a sense of sadness for what I had lost. Then last week, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply stated, "We need to talk." The message was brief, stating that they needed to meet with me immediately and that it was regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to dismiss it, as I did with all of their previous attempts to reach me. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe a small part of me still wanted a conclusion. After arguing with myself for hours, I decided to listen to them. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing the dishes. She only recognized this a few days ago, when the disposal began making unusual noises and they summoned a plumber to inspect it. My father claimed Gemma was upset when she understood what had transpired and that I had been telling the truth all along. He stated they all felt bad about what they had done to me and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, experiencing a swirl of emotions. On the one hand, I felt vindicated. I had always told the truth and now everyone knew it. However, I was angry. I was outraged that it took 3 years to find out the truth, that I had missed so much time with my family, and that I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to return home. They claim they want to make things right. Gemma has been phoning and messaging nonstop, asking for forgiveness. But I'm not certain I can forgive them. They pushed me out without hesitation. Chose to think the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to send them all to hell and let them deal with the shame of what they did to me. But another part of me misses my previous life and wonders whether there is a way to rebuild what we've lost. I do not know what to do. Should I give them an opportunity to make amends, or should I continue living the life I've created for myself without them? I'm torn and could appreciate some outside insight on this whole situation. Update 1. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I'd want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It truly helped me go through my emotions and figure out what to do. After much debate, I chose to meet with my family. I believed I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't convinced about reconciliation. We decided to meet in a neutral site, a modest coffee shop in the next town over. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown that we wouldn't run across anyone we knew, yet close enough that anyone could get there without too much effort. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner where we could enjoy some solitude. When they walked in, it was like a hit in the belly. Seeing them after 3 years was intense. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. She was older than I remembered, with more gray hair and creases around her eyes. My father appeared weary and tired, his shoulders drooping as if he were carrying a huge weight. Gemma couldn't look me in the eye at first. She appeared smaller and less confident than the sister I recalled. We sat down, and for a time, no one knew what to say. They all started talking at once, with apologies falling out. My parents said they had failed as parents by not trusting me and kicking me out. They admitted that they had regretted their decision every day since, but pride and humiliation had prevented them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been a man of few words, talked for hours about how he had repeated those days in his head, trying to figure out how he could have been so blind. He claimed he had always prided himself on being fair and reasonable, but that emotion had clouded his judgment when it counted the most. My mother, through tears, told me how she had preserved my room exactly as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She stated she would wake up in the middle of the night, thinking she had heard me coming home, only to realize what had transpired. Gemma burst into tears, stating she would never forgive herself for accusing me and damaging our relationship. She mentioned how she had always looked up to me when we were youngsters, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so preoccupied with her own life and troubles that she had lost sight of what was truly important. As they talked, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma stuck up for me when I was bullied in middle school. I reflected on all the times we had laughed together, exchanged secrets, and supported each other during difficult times. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the fantastic times we'd had. I heard everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The anguish and resentment from the previous 3 years were still too raw. I informed them that I needed time to comprehend things. They appeared to comprehend and did not push for more. My mom wanted to hug me before we went, but I backed away. I wasn't prepared for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt look on her face almost convinced me to change my decision, but I remained firm. I needed to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I returned to my apartment and carefully considered what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my previous life? Can I ever trust them again? Was it worth attempting to repair our relationship? I recognized that, while I missed having a family, I had also developed significantly in the previous 3 years. I had become self-sufficient, robust, and had created a life for myself from scratch. I wasn't the same person they'd kicked out 3 years before. I reflected about my warehouse work, my online education, and the friends I'd made. I had worked hard to reach where I was, and I was pleased with what I had accomplished on my own. The thought of abandoning that and returning to my old life felt awful. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family had triggered a variety of feelings. Despite everything, I still loved and missed them. I wondered if I could have a relationship with them while still keeping my independence. After a few days of deliberation, I reached a decision. I called my parents and explained that while I appreciated their apology, I was not yet ready to fully reconcile. I informed them that I needed more time and space to heal. I also established some boundaries. I indicated I was willing to maintain minimal contact with them, but I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had occurred. I told them that if we were to continue our connection, it had to be on my terms. They expressed disappointment but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and allow me the time I needed. My mother asked if she might phone me once a week to check in, and I agreed, assuming it would be a nice approach to gradually re-establish trust. As for Gemma, I've decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had affected me the most, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. I told her I needed more time before I could consider having another relationship with her. She was upset, but explained that she understood and would wait until I was ready. It's been a rough week, with many emotional highs and lows. I've had moments when I questioned my decision, wondering if I'm being too harsh or if I'm passing up an opportunity to reunite with my family. But then I recall how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I'm doing the right thing by taking things slowly. I've also started researching therapeutic possibilities. Many of you suggested it in the comments, and I believe it would be beneficial to have a professional to speak with while I navigate this tricky situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it could be beneficial to me. For the time being, my primary focus is on my job and studies. I have a huge project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let all of this family drama distract me from my goals. I am also thinking about moving to a better apartment. I've been saving, and I think I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are individuals out there who understand and care, even if we've never met. I'll provide an update if anything substantial changes. Update 2. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I'd like to share some developments. I've been sticking to the boundaries I've established with my family. We've had a few phone calls and text messages, but nothing particularly intense. It's been okay, awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in every now and then, but they don't ask for more than I'm prepared to provide. I can tell they are working hard to rebuild trust, but it is a slow process. My mother calls once a week, as we promised. These calls were strained at first, with extended silences, but they are becoming easier. We usually discuss neutral issues, such as her employment at the hospital, the weather, and my online education. It's not much, but it's a beginning. My father has been sending me short emails, usually simply to check in or share something he thinks I'd be interested in. Last week, he forwarded me an article about a new business launching in our hometown. It was a little gesture, but it reminded me of how he would clip newspaper stories for me. When I was younger, Gemma struggled with the barrier I'd created between us. She sent me many long, emotional texts apologizing and pleading for the opportunity to make things right. I responded simply, stating that I need more time. It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine. The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on. In terms of my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution located approximately an hour distant provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I'm prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me, an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest. After I told her, she showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself, and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family. Not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and bitterness, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about everything that has transpired. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about. But now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We intend to stay in touch once I relocate, with weekly phone calls and visits during the holidays. It's a start. Perhaps, with time and distance, we will be able to create something new. For the time being, my attention is focused on the future. I'm excited about my new work, the new city, and the opportunities that await me. I've started looking for apartments online and researched the region where I'll be residing. It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, but I'm largely looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens to my family, I'm confident I'll be okay. I've shown to myself that I can deal with whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the value of surrounding myself with people that believe in and support me, whether they're related or not. After my wife passed away, my sister-in-law tried to take my children. She called CPS on me, but the judge's decision left her completely shocked. I, 29M, lost my wife, Mia, 31F, in a horrific vehicle accident 6 months ago. We have twin sons, Ethan and Noah, 7M, and their transition to life without their mother has been extremely challenging. Mia and I met in high school. She was a senior and I was a sophomore. It was not love at first sight or anything dramatic like that. We were lab partners in AP Biology, and at first we couldn't stand one another. Mia believed I was a slacker because I was often joking around, and I thought she was stressed because she was obsessed with obtaining perfect grades. However, as we worked together during the semester, things changed. I could see Mia was passionate about science, and her eyes lit up when she talked about her ambitions to work in technology. She recognized that, despite my joker demeanor, I was actually quite excellent at biology and cared about succeeding. We began hanging out outside of class, studying together, and those study sessions evolved into date nights. When Mia left for college, everyone assumed we wouldn't last. They believed high school relationships couldn't survive long distance, but we proved them wrong. We talked every day, saw each other as frequently as possible, and when I graduated 2 years later, I chose a college near her so we could finally be together again. We married just after I finished college. There was a little ceremony in Mia's parents' backyard. Mia's sister, Jen, 35F, served as maid of honor, and my best college mate was the best man. Mia's parents, John, 62M, and Linda, 60F, were overjoyed. They had always regarded me as a son and now it was official. We had the boys a year later. It wasn't planned and we were both shocked to learn Mia was pregnant, and much more so when we discovered she was carrying twins. However, the moment Ethan and Noah were born, they became our entire universe. Mia was always the ambitious one. She secured a position as a software engineer at a major technology business right out of college and swiftly rose through the ranks. I had studied education with the intention of becoming a teacher, but when the boys were born, we felt it would be more practical for me to stay at home with them. Mia's pay was more than adequate to sustain us, and childcare for twins would have consumed the majority of my potential teaching compensation anyhow. I like being a stay-at-home dad. I got to see all of the boys' firsts. First steps, first words, and first day of school. Mia would come home every evening, eager to hear about their day, and weekends were always spent with the family. We lived a lovely, happy life. Then 6 months ago everything shifted. Mia was heading home after a late night at work. It had been pouring, the roads were slick and a drunk driver had run a red light and damaged her vehicle. She was killed on impact. In a moment, our lovely little world was shattered. The first several weeks following Mia's death were a fog. I was in shock, going through the rituals of preparing the funeral and caring for the boys without fully absorbing what had happened. Jen and Mia's parents were quite helpful throughout that time. They essentially moved in, preparing meals, assisting with the boys, and taking phone calls from well-wishers. However, as the weeks passed into months, I began to feel suffocated. Jen, in particular, appeared reluctant to leave. She'd come over every day, frequently staying until late in the evening. At first, I was appreciative for the assistance. She'd cook meals, help with the boys' homework, and even begin teaching them how to play the piano, which Mia had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Jen's behavior did, however, become more controlling and judgmental over time. She began making comments about my parenting. She'd say things like, "Mia would have done it this way," or "the boys need a woman's touch." It hurt, but I brushed it off, believing she was also grieving. She then proceeded to criticize my job search efforts. With Mia gone, I needed to start earning money to support the boys, but if I mentioned a job application or an interview, Jen would reply, "You should be focusing on the boys, not your career." Or, "Mia wouldn't want you to put the boys in daycare." I tried to explain that I had no choice. Our funds would not last forever, and while Mia had life insurance, I preferred to save that money for the boys' future. But Jen would not listen. She insisted that she and her husband, Mark, 37M, could help out financially if necessary. Jen arrived unannounced with a bundle of documents last week, escalating the situation. She sat me down at the kitchen table, where Mia and I had spent countless evenings discussing our future, and informed me that she thought it would be best if she became the boys' legal guardian. I was stunned. Jen went on to say that she and Mark could create a more stable home situation for the boys, who needed a mother role. She discussed how they had a larger house and a better school district, how Mark's position as a lawyer meant they were financially stable, and how she could remain at home full-time with the boys, just as I had done. I listened in disbelief as Jen explained her idea. She assured me that I could still see the boys whenever I wanted, and that this was not about taking them away from me, but about doing what was best for them. She even proposed that I move in with them, at least temporarily, to aid with the transition. When I finally found my voice, I told her, no, absolutely not. These were my children and Mia's children. We raised kids together and planned their futures together. I was fully capable of raising children on my own. Jen did not take my refusal well. She started ranting, accusing me of being selfish and not thinking about what was best for the boys. She brought up every minor error I'd made in the previous 6 months, such as forgetting to pack Ethan's lunch for a school trip or Noah receiving a low mark because I didn't assist him study for an exam. She had the audacity to suggest that Mia would be disappointed in me. That was the final straw. I lost my temper and ordered Jen to leave. I told her she was no longer welcome in our home unless she respected my status as the boy's father. She departed in tears, and I assumed that was the end of it. Yesterday, I received a call from Child Protective Services. They informed me that someone had expressed concern about my abilities to care for the boys. They didn't say who created the report, but I knew it had to be Jen. I am enraged and afraid. A CPS worker is due to investigate our home next week. I contacted John and Linda to explain what had happened, hoping they could persuade Jen. Instead, they agreed with her. They believe I am being unreasonable and should consider Jen's offer for the benefit of the boys. They even propose that I live with them and allow them help raise the children. I feel like I'm under attack from all sides. These people claim to love my boys, but they are attempting to destroy the only stable thing the twins have left, their bond with me. I'm doing my best to balance everything, and while I've made mistakes, I adore my sons more than anything in the world. Last night, after I put the boys to bed, I sat in Mia's former home office, surrounded by her belongings. Her degrees on the wall, family photos on the desk, and even her favorite coffee mug, which was right where she left it the morning before. I broke down and cried for the first time in months. I miss her so badly. I miss her counsel, her laugh, and the way she could always relax me when I was stressed. I'm not sure how to do this without her, but I need to figure it out for Ethan and Noah. They have already lost their mother. I can't let them lose their father either. I do not know what to do. Should I concede to avoid a messy legal battle? Should I lose relations with Mia's family entirely? How can I safeguard my rights as a father while simultaneously doing what is best for my boys? Update 1. It's been a month since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for everyone's kind remarks and advice. Your remarks helped me gain perspective and find the courage to speak up for myself and my sons. The CPS visit was 2 weeks ago and it went better than expected. Sarah, the social worker, was both compassionate and professional. She arrived early in the morning, right as I was preparing the boys for school. I was nervous, but I tried to appear normal for Ethan and Noah's sake. Sarah observed our morning routine, me making breakfast, well, pouring cereal, but hey, it was a healthy brand. Assisting the boys in packing their backpacks, and double-checking that Ethan had his inhaler. She appeared impressed by how well the boys behaved and how easily everything went. Sarah inspected our home after I dropped the boys off at school. I'll admit that it wasn't spotless. There were some dishes in the sink from the night before and toys scattered throughout the living room, but it was clean where it counted. No safety concerns, plenty of food in the fridge and clean clothes in the boys' wardrobes. I showed Sarah the boys' room, which still contained some of Mia's touches. She had created a woodland painting on one wall when the boys were toddlers. They adore it so much that I can't force myself to paint over it, even though it breaks my heart every time I see it. Sarah spotted the piano in the main area and inquired about it. I mentioned how Jen had been teaching the boys to play, but I didn't go into depth about our disagreement. I did add that music was important to Mia and that I was trying to keep that aspect of her alive for the boys. I had prepared a folder with crucial documents, including the boys' medical records, school reports, and even a detailed plan of our daily activities. I also have documents for my job search and financial preparations. Sarah appeared impressed with my organization and effort. During her visit, Sarah interviewed me about our current predicament. I was open about the obstacles I've faced as a single father, but I also highlighted all of my efforts. I told her about our family counseling sessions and how I've encouraged the boys to talk about their mother and their emotions. Sarah didn't inquire who wrote the CPS report, but she did ask whether anyone had any reservations about my parenting. I pondered before deciding to be honest. I recounted the scenario to Jen and Mia's parents, including my assumptions about who had made the report. Sarah declined to confirm or deny, however she did state that fraudulent reports are handled extremely seriously. Sarah called me about a week following our visit. She informed me that the case would be closed because there was no evidence of neglect or abuse. She also stated that they would be looking into the source of the report for any potential system misuse. I felt a great weight lifted off my shoulders. With that hurdle crossed, I resolved to confront Jen. I asked her over to chat while the boys were at a friend's house. She was clearly nervous when she came. We sat at the kitchen table, where she had startled me with her guardianship papers a month before. I carefully lay out everything. How her actions had affected me and the boys, my suspicions regarding the CPS report, and my next steps. I informed her that, while I appreciated her assistance in the beginning, her subsequent acts had crossed a boundary. Jen burst into tears, confirming that she had actually phoned CPS. She said she was concerned about the boys and believed she was doing the right thing. She mentioned how seeing me struggle reminded her of when Mia and I first started dating, and how protective she had been of her younger sister. I then told her that, while I realized she was also suffering, her behaviors were inappropriate. I stated that, for the time being, she would not be permitted unsupervised visits with the boys. She would only be able to view them if I was present. Jen did not take it well. She accused me of using the boys to punish her and threatened to sue for grandparents' rights on John and Linda's behalf. I held firm, warning her that any additional threats would result in her losing all contact with the boys. After Jen had left, I called John and Linda. I described everything that had transpired and my decision about Jen. To my surprise, they were more understanding than I anticipated. They admitted to being concerned, but later realized they had gone too far. They apologized for recommending that I give up custody and asked if we could work on repairing our relationship. We decided to start with brief, supervised visits. They came over last weekend, and it was fine. Not spectacular, but not bad either. The boys were delighted to meet their grandparents, and John and Linda appeared to make an effort to support rather than question my parenting choices. I've been honest with the boys about what's going on in an age-appropriate way. They miss their aunt, but they've shown incredible resilience. We've started attending a family counselor to assist us get through this difficult period. Noah confessed during our previous session that he sometimes feels upset at Mia for leaving us. It crushed my heart, but the counselor indicated it's a common reaction for children struggling with loss. On a good side, I was able to acquire a work-from-home position as a customer support representative for an online retailer. It's not ideal, and certainly not what I expected to accomplish with my education degree, but it allows me to be present for the boys while also earning a living. The hours are flexible, so I can work while the boys are in school and after they go to bed. I've also contacted out to other of Mia's former colleagues, who have been really sympathetic. Several of them have offered to serve as references for me, and one even assisted me in updating my resume. It's bittersweet. These are folks I used to see at corporate picnics and holiday parties, and now they're assisting me in finding work because Mia is no longer with us. It is still a battle. Every day I am overcome with emotion when I look at the boys and see Mia's eyes or grin, and it hits me all over again that she is no longer with us. But we're figuring out our new normal. Last night, as I was snuggling the boys into bed, Ethan asked if we could go to the park where Mia used to take them on Saturdays. It hurt, yet it felt good to recall those pleasant days. We're planning to go this weekend. I am more motivated than ever to be the father that Ethan and Noah deserve. Mia and I may not have prepared for this, but I am confident she would be pleased with how we are handling it. We'll be okay. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my previous update, and I wish I could say things had improved, but life seems determined to throw more problems at us. Jen reached out about a month ago to apologize. She explained that she had begun bereavement counseling and realized how improper her actions had been. She asked if we could begin mending our connection. I was cautious, but I agreed to let her observe the boys in supervised settings. We started with short visits to our residence. Jen would come over for supper once a week, and we'd play board games or watch movies together. It was awkward at first, but eventually things seemed more normal. The boys were overjoyed to have their aunt back in their life, especially since she started their piano lessons. Things were going nicely for a few weeks. Jen seemed to accept my boundaries, and there were times when I felt like we were reuniting as a family. She even helped me paint the boys' room. We preserved Mia's woodland mural while updating the rest of the walls to reflect the boys' current interests. But then, last week, everything crumbled again. I received a call from the boys' school in the middle of my work shift. Ethan experienced a severe asthma attack, and when they attempted to use his inhaler, they realized it was empty. I was horrified. I regularly check their inhalers and carry extras at school. I dashed to the school, my pulse racing the entire way. When I arrived, I found Jen in the nurse's office with Ethan. She was distraught, apologizing repeatedly. Ethan was pale and wobbly, but well. The school nurse was able to utilize a nebulizer to assist him with breathing. Jen had picked up the boys from school the day before, with my consent, and driven them to the park. Ethan had a slight episode, and they depleted his inhaler. Jen agreed to tell me so I could refill it, but she forgot. She was so embarrassed that she didn't say anything, hoping that I'd check it myself before the boys left for school. I was infuriated. Jen had not only endangered Ethan's life, but she had also violated my trust. In the heat of the moment, I informed her that she was no longer welcome in our life. I yelled some nasty things that I'm not proud of, but I was terrified and angry. The next day, I received a letter from an attorney. Jen and Mia's parents are seeking grandparents' rights and custody of the boys. They are saying that I'm an unfit parent, citing the asthma event in the earlier CPS report as evidence. I am devastated and afraid. I cannot lose my boys. They are all I have left of Mia, and more significantly, they are my entire universe. I have called a family lawyer, and we are planning to fight this. But I'm worried. What if the judge thinks I'm an inadequate parent? What if they believe the boys will be better off with Jen and their grandparents? To make matters worse, my work-from-home job is faltering. The company is downsizing, and I'm concerned about losing my income just when I need it most for legal bills. I've started applying for various jobs, but it's difficult to find something that gives me the flexibility to care for the boys. The guys realize that something is wrong. They have been asking about Aunt Jen and why they are unable to see her. I'm trying to shelter them from the legal battle, but it's difficult. Noah has begun to have nightmares, and Ethan's asthma appears to be flaring up more frequently, most likely owing to stress. Last night, I discovered Noah sitting in Mia's old office, gazing at images of her on her computer. He asked me if Mommy would be upset with him for missing Aunt Jen. It broke my heart. I sat with him and we went through the images, discussing our greatest recollections of Mia. I told him that Mommy would never be mad at him for his sentiments, and that it's okay to miss someone even if we disagree with them. I feel like I'm failing them. I strive so hard to be both a mother and a father, to care for them financially and emotionally, but it never seems enough. I miss Mia more than ever. She would know how to manage it. She always knew exactly what to say to make things better. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor, has been a godsend throughout this. She is a retired teacher who lives next door and has been helping me with the boys after school. She has offered to testify on my behalf if the custody matter proceeds to court. It means a lot to know that someone notices how hard I try. I'm not giving up, however. These are my guys, and I will fight with everything I have to keep our family together. I only hope this is enough. Update 3. It has been 6 weeks since my last update, and I'm relieved to report that things have finally improved. The custody struggle between Jen and Mia's parents went to court. It was a tough process that took several days. I had to sit there and listen while Jen and her lawyer branded me as an unfit parent, pointing out every mistake I had made since Mia's death. They discussed the asthma incident, the CPS report, and times when I had been late picking up the boys from school due to work. But my lawyer was fantastic. She helped me remain cool and presented our argument effectively. We had character witnesses, Mrs. Rodriguez, the boys' teachers, and even some of Mia's former co-workers, who testified to how involved I am in the boys' lives, how they are always clean, well-fed and happy. Mrs. Rodriguez's testimony was quite moving. She mentioned overhearing me reading to the boys every night, even when I was fatigued from work, and how she frequently observed us playing in the backyard or doing homework together. We also had evidence of all of my efforts, such as documentation of our therapy sessions, the boys' improved grades, and even a notebook I'd kept to chronicle Ethan's asthma symptoms and treatments. The turning point came when the judge requested to talk with Ethan and Noah alone. I was nervous, but I was confident the boys would tell the truth. When they came out, Noah went up to me and hugged me tightly. The judge did not tell me what they said, but her eyes shone with new comprehension. In the end, the judge decided in my favor. She stated that, while I'm not perfect, I am a dedicated father who does his best in difficult circumstances. She chastised Jen and my in-laws for attempting to bully me through the judicial system rather than working together to benefit the boys. The judge ordered Jen and Mia's parents to come to family counseling with us if they want to keep their contact with the boys. They agreed, and we have had 2 sessions thus far. It's been tense, but I'm hoping we can rebuild trust for the benefit of the boys. On the work front, I received unexpected excellent news. One of Mia's former co-workers contacted her with a job offer. It's an entry-level employment at the tech business Mia previously worked for, with flexible hours and the ability to work from home as needed. The compensation is significantly more than my current employment and there is possibility for advancement. I start next month and am both excited and nervous. The guys are doing better too. We've settled into a good pattern and they're becoming more honest about their feelings. Last week, Noah said he was proud of me for fighting the bad guys in court. It made me realize that, despite my efforts to insulate them, they know more than I give them credit for. We still have terrible days. Sometimes I reach for my phone to text me about something hilarious the boys did, only to realize she's gone. The boys still grieve when they mourn their mother, but we are learning to navigate this new normal together. I understand we have a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I am optimistic about our future. Mia would be proud of how far we've come, and I'm determined to keep going for the boys and her memory. Thank you for your continued support along this journey. Your wisdom and nice words have been a lifeline at the most difficult times. We'll be okay. My stepfather's temptation could destroy everything, and my mom has no idea what's happening between us. Have you ever kept a secret that may destroy everything because it was so risky and enticing? That was my existence, and the secret I kept was as illegal as the subsequent sinister cravings. This is my story, and my name is Isabel. Something inside of me changed the night following my 18th birthday, and now that I'm 19, it all began. This is not what I asked for. Victor wasn't someone I asked for. But here I am, speaking the truth to you. I need to get it off my chest, even if I'm not proud of it. My stepfather, Victor, was no ordinary man. With just a glance, he was able to command the room and exert a silent authority over others. I knew there was something sinister about him from the time he married my mother. However, I believed that danger was not intended for me. Like a breeze that gradually develops into a storm, it started off so innocently. I have a clear memory of that evening. The house was silent and it was late. The only sounds were the waves breaking outside, as though the sea was aware of the mayhem that was developing inside of me. My mother didn't realize the tension was rising below. She was sleeping upstairs. When I arrived downstairs, Victor was seated at the kitchen table, wearing a flimsy robe that hardly fit me. I convinced myself that I wasn't attempting to impress him. However, the slow, methodical manner his eyes followed me gave the impression that he saw me in a way that no one else had. At first, he merely watched without saying anything. Even though it was unsettling, I couldn't help myself. His eyes were heavy and seductive, and something dark and terrible sprang up inside of me at that very moment. As though the room itself could sense the change in our dynamic, the air between us was heavy and nearly oppressive. Then he said, "You're up late," in a low, nearly growling voice. As if daring me to step beyond an unseen line from which none of us could return, his words lingered in the air like a challenge. I said, "I couldn't sleep," as my heart began to race. My feet remained set despite knowing I should leave, defying the logic that was screaming in my head. He grinned, but it was a smile that aroused something deep inside me rather than reaching his eyes. "Spend some time sitting with me, keep me company." I paused, but only briefly. The table felt like a thin wall separating two worlds, one familiar and comfortable, the other unfamiliar and perilous, and before I realized it, I was seated across from him. His fingers brushed mine as his hand went over the table. Even though the touch was fleeting, it made me quiver. It was plenty to make me gasp for air and to get me to doubt every single barrier I believed I had. He said, "I've been watching you," in a softer, more personal tone. I didn't pull away as his fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. "You're not a little girl anymore, Isabel." My chest was thumping with my heart. I ought to have said something, anything at all, but I was stuck in this weird, perverse moment. His words and the way he gazed at me conveyed a sense of both fear and excitement, as if I were more than simply his stepdaughter and no longer invisible. I was afraid because I was something more. The tension-filled stillness that lingered between us was a result of unsaid wishes seething beneath the surface. My thinking begged me to flee and to put an end to whatever it was before it got out of control. However, my body ignored me. Despite my knowledge that it was improper, I felt a strong attraction to him. "Does it scare you?" As if he could read the struggle brewing within me, he inquired in a voice so silky it was practically a whisper. "The way I look at you?" I tightened my throat and swallowed hard. I was unable to respond. Rather, I found myself standing and moving toward him around the table as though I were unable to escape some unseen force. As I got closer, his body tensed and his eyes darkened. The heat of his presence and the way the air between us seemed to vibrate with expectation caused me to stop a few inches from him. I felt a shock of electricity as his hand extended and brushed across my arm's sensitive flesh. My body betrayed me once more, and I let out a quiet gasp. Even when I muttered, "You know this can't happen," I didn't believe myself. A different story was revealed by the way I shuddered under his touch. He whispered, "And yet here you are." As his hand moved up my arm and settled on my shoulder, I felt my body lean into his touch as his thumb touched the side of my neck, seeking it in a manner I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore the guilt that was eating at me by closing my eyes, but it didn't help. I had gone too far. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and I could feel his hot, seductive breath on my skin. I wanted to halt. I had to quit. However, I was unable to. With his lips so close to mine that I could just taste the forbidden, he said, "What do you want, Isabel?" I opened my eyes and looked him in the eye. The same yearning that boiled within me was seen in his eyes. But before I could respond, the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Mom was up. I took a step back, the reality of what nearly happened rushing down around me, my heart thumping in my chest. Victor flashed a sly smile, as though he had just won a devious game. He got up and brushed by me, his hand caressing my waist as he went. "We should talk again sometime," he muttered. The moment was over in an instant. However, the fire he had kindled within me was unquenchable. "And you, how would you respond if I were you? Would you walk away or give in to temptation? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I need to understand that I'm not alone in feeling torn between good and wrong. I couldn't get that night out of my head. I wasn't sure I could resist the way Victor's breath brushed across my lips and the way his touch shot sparks through my skin. The power he had over me, a subtle unsaid authority that both scared and made me feel alive, was more than simply the physical. And we started playing the game seriously after that evening. Days went by, and on the surface, everything appeared to be as usual. My mother was blissfully oblivious, as though she was unaffected by the tension in the air. However, every look, every word and every moment we shared became electrified between Victor and me. It was approaching something that neither of us could stop, like a slow-burning fuse. I made an effort to stay away from him, telling myself that it was the proper course of action. I spent more time in my room, concentrated on my coursework, or went to the beach to get some fresh air and let the sound of the waves soothe my mind. But the memory of his touch followed me everywhere like an unseen hand. Things got out of hand on a Saturday afternoon. Victor and I were left alone while my mother left for some errands in town. I had promised myself that I would remain in my room, stay away from him, and maintain my normalcy. However, as the hours passed, the house's silence tormented me, and the more I considered it, the more I found myself straying downstairs, attracted to the peril like a moth to a flame. He was reading a newspaper in the living room as if nothing had ever transpired between us. However, I could sense him. Every part of me knew about him. I remained there with my heart pounding, not sure if I should approach him or head back upstairs. But my body had already decided and was moving in closer. He continued, "I see you've come out of hiding," in a calm voice that had a tinge that made my heart race. I could tell he felt me even though his gaze remained fixed on the newspaper. "Is this the way things will be going forward, Isabel? Me chasing, you running?" I tried to say, "I'm not running," but my voice deceived me. We were both aware that I was lying. "Really?" Now, his tone was playful, as though he were challenging me to tell the truth. When he eventually lowered the newspaper and met my gaze, the magnetic force between us returned with greater vigor than before. "Because it seems like that's exactly what you've been doing." I started to reply, but the words became stuck in my throat. Rather, I simply stood there and gazed at him, feeling the gravity of the situation increase. My mind cried out for me to get out, to return upstairs, and to stop this risky game before it continued. However, my body had other ideas. With his gaze fixed on mine, Victor reclined in his chair. He whispered, "Come here." But it wasn't a request. It was a command, and I felt a shock of energy. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved forward. I was unable to stop myself. I was unwilling to stop. As I walked toward him, my heart thumping louder with every step, the space felt too small and too hot. When I got close enough, he extended his hand and ran it up my arm, causing my skin to tingle from the heat of his touch. Breathless, I waited there, anticipating the next move. After that, he carefully and slowly drew me onto his lap. The way his hand slid over me and the feel of his body beneath mine was seductive, even though I knew it was wrong. My entire body was ablaze, with every nerve begging for more. Even so, a tiny voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me of the repercussions and that my mother was only a few miles away and was totally unaware of the treachery taking place right in front of her. "What are we doing?" I didn't know if I wanted an answer, so I whispered. Victor's lips touched my ear as his hands closed tighter around my waist. His breath was hot against my skin as he whispered, "Exactly what you want." His fingers moved slowly in circles around my exposed skin as they slid under the hem of my shirt, giving me chills with every touch. My body betrayed me once more as I leaned toward him when I should have stopped him and backed away. I felt my breath catch as his hands rose higher and his fingertips touched the curvature of my waist. The distinction between right and wrong became hazy, and my only thought was how wonderful it felt to be wanted and caressed in this way. I began to say, "We can't." But my words were halting and unconvincing. Already I was leaning into him, wanting and needing more. He pressed his lips to my neck and said, "We already are," which caused my veins to boil up. My body shook with anticipation as I let out a faint gasp as his fingers crept lower, hinting at the border of the forbidden. But before anything further could happen, there was a knock on the door. The moment broke as we both froze. Panic was coursing through my veins as my heart raced. My mom couldn't have returned by now, could she? With a dark, menacing flicker in his eyes, Victor's hand slipped away from me. "Go," he urged softly. His tone calm yet forceful, as though nothing unusual had just occurred. "Upstairs. Now." I refrained from arguing. With my legs shaking, I leaped from his lap and rushed back to my room, my thoughts racing. With my heart racing and the realization of what nearly transpired weighing heavily on me, I closed the door behind me. I tried to quiet the roaring tempest of emotions inside of me by pressing my back against the door and breathing heavily. There was still heat between us, simmering beneath the surface, waiting to burst at the next chance. How would you have responded? Remaining or walking away? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, so please let me know in the comments. Even though I made an effort to suppress it, the guilt kept eating away at me. I kept thinking about Victor's hands on me and the fire between us whenever I was by myself. As if he knew precisely how to pull me apart, I would close my eyes and feel his breath on my neck and the way his fingers had moved over my flesh. I felt alive, even powerful, but that strength had a cost, and I wasn't prepared to pay it. My mother had no suspicions. Unaware of the chaos simmering beneath the surface, she continued to live her days with the same radiant smile. I saw that I was avoiding her more and more and stayed away from her whenever I could. I didn't want her to ask me questions I couldn't answer or see the shame in my eyes. I was too terrified to witness the extent of the harm that would be caused when the truth ultimately exploded because it was a ticking time bomb. The situation worsened once more on a Sunday afternoon. Victor and I were alone again since my mom had gone to see a friend across town. Since that day in the living room, the air between us had become more dense. Every interaction was a game we were both playing and neither of us had the guts to stop, a quiet challenge. I pretended to read while I sat on the back porch, but my gaze kept going to the open door behind me. I could feel him, the weight of his presence raising the hair on the back of my neck, and I knew he was inside. With him so near, I was unable to concentrate as my fingers fumbled with the pages. I knew it was him before I even turned when the door cracked open. He went outside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though he wanted me to have time to respond. With every stride he took toward me, my pulse quickened and my heart raced. "Isabel," he said in a quiet, nearly whispery voice, as though we were exchanging secrets. We were, in a sense. I swallowed hard and put the book down without giving him a glance. I was unable to. I knew I wouldn't be able to control myself if I did. He said, "We need to talk," as he approached and cast his shadow over me. Instead of taking a seat, he simply stood there, looming over me like some evil entity against which I was powerless. I managed to say, "I don't think that's a good idea," though my voice was a little shaky. He knelt next to me, so close I could feel the heat emanating from his body. "You know we can't pretend this didn't happen." My breath caught in my throat as I finally turned to face him. Something I couldn't identify but sensed deep within me was visible in his black eyes. It was more than just desire. It was dangerous. It was the excitement of knowing that we were tinkering with fire and that we dared to allow it to devour us. I said, "I'm not pretending." But I knew it was a lie as soon as I said it. Victor's fingertips touched my skin in a way that made me shiver as he reached out and brushed a lock of hair away from my face. "Don't you sense it? This is between us. It won't go away." I ought to have gotten up, left and put an end to this before things got out of hand. However, I remained motionless, my body deceiving me once more. His presence was overwhelming, and his touch was electric. Even though I knew I would get burned, I couldn't help but be pulled to him like a moth to a flame. "Victor!" My voice trembled with a mixture of excitement and dread, barely audible. His breath was hot against my ear as he leaned closer. He muttered, "Tell me to stop," as his lips touched my flesh. "Tell me you don't want this." I ought to have said it. I ought to have told him to stop and go away. However, I didn't. I was unable to. As an alternative, I turned to face him, our lips almost touching. The tension between us was heavy and intolerable, and my heart was thumping in my chest. The words, "I can't," escaped my lips before I could stop them. I was pulled to my feet by Victor's hand as it moved down my arm and wrapped around my wrist. He held on tight. Standing so close that our bodies nearly touched, he held me there. As the attraction between us took hold, the outside world appeared to fade into the background. He said, "You don't want me to stop," in a confident tone, as though he knew me better than I did. "You've been considering it. It's visible in your eyes." My breath came in short spurts as I bit my lip. I detested his accuracy and ability to read me. I thought about him, what we could do and what we had already done whenever we were alone. The urge was stronger than anything I had ever experienced, yet the guilt was still present. I was drawn closer when Victor's hand moved to my waist. His body was pushed against mine, and I could feel the searing heat between us. He teased, taunted, and dared me to give in as his lips lingered over mine. My body desired this, but my head and heart were screaming for me to leave. "This is what I wanted." He whispered, "Tell me what you want, Isabel." His lips grazing mine, just barely touching. I was unable to talk. My mind was racing with contradictory feelings and my throat felt constricted. I had no choice but to lean into him, close my eyes, and wait for the inevitable to come. However, a car pulled into the driveway before our lips could touch. The truth of what we were going to do hit me like a tidal wave, and I jerked away as my eyes snapped open. My mom was at home. Victor took a step back, his expression unreadable. The fire between us remained, simmering just below the surface, waiting for the next opportunity to explode, even though the time was past. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would you turn away or allow yourself to sink further? Tell me in the comments below. I must understand that I am not alone in this problem. Long after the moment was over, I could still feel the heat of his touch. The tension between us was intensifying and taking over every silent moment, every look and every word spoken in private. In an exciting and terrifying way, Victor had a way of making me feel needed and seen. And suddenly the distinction between good and wrong became increasingly hazy with every day that went by. Everything changed that night. Victor and I were alone once more after my mother left for the evening. I made an effort to persuade myself that everything would be all right and that I could live with him in the same home without developing the same risky habits. However, I felt in my heart that I was deceiving myself. I heard him behind me as I was idly tidying up in the kitchen after supper. I felt that familiar thrill of eagerness when I heard his footsteps. I knew it was him without even turning around. Unspoken anxiety thickened the air as it shifted. Victor said, "You're quiet tonight," in his usual smooth and low voice. He drew nearer until I could feel his body heat behind me. As I dried a plate, my hands shaking, I lied and said, "I'm just tired." Naturally, he didn't believe me. His eyes were on me, waiting, watching. He was always able to tell when I was lying and when I was attempting to hide. However, it never succeeded. Even when I tried to pull away, Victor had a way of drawing me back in. "You've been avoiding me," he murmured quietly, with a hint of wicked humor in his voice. "Why?" I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate on the task at hand. I murmured, "I haven't." But even I thought the words sounded weak. He whispered, "Isabel." And I felt a chill go through me when I heard my name. I could feel his breath on my neck now that he was so near. "Observe me." I paused, holding the towel in my hands tighter. My body was deceiving me once more, pulling me toward him despite my knowledge that it was wrong, despite my mind's cries for me to move away and put as much distance between us as possible. I turned to him slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see that same need, that same deadly intensity that prevented me from thinking clearly, when his dark eyes met mine. I was caught when he moved closer and pressed me up against the counter. The intense yearning that had been growing between us for weeks was trapped between him and me. He stated in a deep, confident voice, "You can't keep running from this. You sense it. I am certain that you do." He reached out and gently but purposefully brushed his fingertips on my cheek, causing my breath to catch in my throat. I felt the heat rising in my body and my pulse speeding as the touch gave me a shock of electricity. I said, "We can't." But even I found the words to be weak and unconvincing. "And yet," he whispered, drawing me in closer as his hand moved down to rest on my waist. "We're here." I ought to have shoved him aside. I ought to have urged him to cease. However, I didn't. Rather, my body betrayed every logical notion I had, and I stood there. I felt the air between us get thicker and heavier as his hand crept lower, following the curvature of my waist, as though the room itself knew we were about to do something we couldn't undo. With guilt still gnawing at me, I muttered, "I don't want to hurt her." Yet my body still leaned toward his touch, yearning for it. Victor's voice was a sensual whisper as his lips touched my ear. She is not involved in this. This concerns us. I felt the tightness coil inside of me tighten as I closed my eyes. His hands were all over me, soft yet firm, and I could feel myself slipping, sinking more into the pit we had made. Like a fire that threatened to devour all in its path, the heat between us was intolerable. With his lips grazing the side of my neck, he muttered, "Tell me to stop," sending chills down my spine. "Tell me you're not interested in this." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as I felt the hard planes of his body against mine, I pushed him closer rather than pushing him away. My senses were overwhelmed by the warm, musky, delicious scent of him, which impairs judgment and prevents me from thinking about anything but him. "I can't," I said in a tremulous but honest voice. "I am unable to stop." All he needed was that. It was as though the world vanished when his lips struck mine. Only we were there, and the heat was all-consuming and oppressive, threatening to suffocate us both. As our bodies crushed together, the tension between us finally broke as his hands tangled in my hair and drew me in closer. I could feel his breath catch. The illicit yearning that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long had us engrossed in one another. His touch was all over me, burning my skin and causing pain I didn't know was conceivable. And I was unable to stop. I had no desire to. But then everything fell apart as fast as it had started. We both snapped out of the moment as we heard a creak of floorboards coming from the hallway. Our bodies remained squeezed together as we froze, breathing raggedly. Panic swept through me as my heart thumped in my chest. Were we spotted? Was there anyone who heard? There was a flash of something there. Something dangerous. But Victor was the first to pull away, his eyes dark and unreadable. The tension in the air was still heavy and oppressive, yet he straightened and smoothed his shirt as though nothing had happened. He said in a promising whisper, "We'll finish this later," and turned to leave me standing there, gasping for air and feeling as though the weight of what we had just done was bearing down on me. If you were in my shoes, how would you respond? Would you have allowed yourself to fall further, or could you have prevented it? I need to know that I'm not the only one having this problem, so please let me know in the comments. The ensuing days were a haze of yearning and shame. My intellect begged me to stop, but every time I saw Victor, my body tensed with anticipation. But after what had transpired in the kitchen, halting was no longer an option. I was too lost, too enmeshed in a web of passion and feelings that I was unable to break free from. The tension was intense every time we passed each other in the house, even though I hadn't talked to Victor since that night. Thick and oppressive, it hovered between us, a continual reminder of what we had accomplished, and what we still needed to do. My mother was too preoccupied with her own world to realize what was going on right in front of her. The situation changed on a Friday night. Victor and I were once again alone after my mother traveled for the weekend to see some relatives. I should have gone to a friend's house or found a reason to leave, but I chose to stay even though I knew it was risky. I felt compelled to stay and watch where this perverse game would lead us. There was a knock on the door while I was in my room. Knowing who it was before I even opened it made my heart skip a beat. He was standing there when I did, leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe and staring at me with his black eyes. This time, there was no need for small talk or pretense. We both understood his purpose. "Can I come in?" Victor spoke in a low, velvety voice that melted into my skin. I ought to have declined. My pulse was pounding as I shut the door behind him, but instead of closing it and ending it there, I moved aside to let him in. The weight of all we had left unsaid hung in the air between us, making it electrifying. Victor was in the center of the room, his presence strong and overwhelming. With each second that went by, I felt the attraction between us growing stronger than before. "You've been avoiding me," he stated in a composed yet determined tone. Like he was already formulating his next move, his gaze wandered over me, resting on my lips and neck. "I had to," I said, saying hardly louder than a whisper. "I didn't know how to face you after." He interrupted me as he moved in closer, his fingers cupping my chin. My legs went weak as his thumb brushed across my bottom lip in a forceful yet tender manner. His breath was hot against my skin as he muttered, "You don't have to be afraid. This is between us, no one else." With his hands on me and him so near, I tried to slow my breathing by closing my eyes, but it was impossible. Every word and every touch was like fuel for an uncontrollable inferno. I said, "Victor, we can't keep doing this?" But I didn't believe what I was saying. I was already leaning into him, wanting his warmth and touch. He didn't say anything in response. Rather, his hand moved to my waist and drew me to him. His lips touched my ear and I could feel his heartbeat, steady and powerful. With a low growl that chilled my spine, he whispered, "Tell me you don't want this." But I was unable to express it. Nor with my body reacting to him already. Nor with his hands on me. I put my hands on his chest and rather than pushing him away, I drew him in, needing him as much as I needed air. The world seemed to collapse when Victor's lips struck mine. As his hands moved over my body, burning my skin, there was only the heat between us and nothing else. I couldn't get enough of his claiming, possessive touch. I needed and desired more. With our bodies entangled in a tangle of limbs and longing, we staggered back toward the bed. He was touching every part of me, including my neck, waist and hips, as if he was attempting to commit every detail to memory. In the way he made me feel and the way he made everything else vanish, I was engrossed in it. However, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment just when the tension was at its highest. Both of us froze, our bodies still pushed together, our breaths labored. My phone buzzed with an incoming call while it was resting on the nightstand. I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the screen. My mom was the one. As though challenging me to respond, Victor's dark, menacing gaze locked with mine. "Don't," he said in a low, authoritative whisper. As his hand moved up my thigh, I was reminded of the heat that still burned between us and the situation we were in. However, I was unable to ignore the call. With my heart thumping in my chest, I gently pulled him aside and reached for the phone. "It's my mom," I responded, my voice wavering. In an attempt to calm my breathing, I put the phone to my ear but my heart continued to race. I tried to sound natural when I said, "Hey Mom," but my voice sounded breathless. "Is everything okay?" My mother's worried voice said, "Sweetheart, you sound off," over the phone. I looked at Victor, who was grinning at me, that sinister, perilous yearning still shining in his eyes. I tried to gather myself, but my heart was pounding. I lied and said, "Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired, I guess." "Well, I wanted to give you an update. I will return on Sunday night. Please look for yourself." "I will," I said, putting the phone down as fast as I could. Victor was on me once more as soon as the connection finished, his lips grazing my neck and his hands moving up my sides. "Now where were we?" His voice was full of hope as he whispered. However, something had changed within me. The truth of what we were doing struck me like a wave, despite how much I wanted him and how much my body yearned for his touch. The guilt was unbearable, and my mother was out there, totally oblivious to the treachery taking place behind her back. "Victor, stop," I said in a tremulous voice as I pushed him away. He stared at me and hesitated, his eyes narrowing as though he was trying to determine whether I was serious. "I can't do this," I replied, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "Not like this." With his eyes black with annoyance and his jaw clenched, Victor took a step back. "You can't keep running from this," he continued in a menacingly low voice. "You know you want this as much as I do." However, I stepped back and shook my head, my heart thumping in my chest. "I need time." He looked at me for a long time, and I briefly believed he was trying to press the matter. Then, with a low growl of annoyance, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, gasping for air and feeling shaky from the pressure of what we had nearly done. For the following few days, I tried to tell myself that I had made the correct choice and that I had to push Victor away. However, what is the reality? In all honesty, I was barely able to keep my composure. I could still feel his hands on me and hear his deep, authoritative voice telling me not to run every time I closed my eyes. I had no desire to flee, not from him. However, the weight of our actions and the remorse were too great. But I couldn't get him out of my head. He seemed to have taken up residence in every part of me, including my body and mind. I could feel him haunting me even when we weren't together, drawing me back into that dangerous dark world where we were the only ones who cared. And I knew I couldn't avoid it no matter how hard I tried. On a Thursday night, everything went wrong. I was alone, trying to concentrate on anything other than Victor as my mom was expected to be home late from work. However, it was useless since he had entered my thoughts and the urge would not go, no matter how hard I tried to stop it. The entrance door creaked open as I was in the living room. A beat skipped in my chest. Even before I saw him, I knew it was him, that this was the moment I had been trying to avoid but was unable to do so. As he entered the room, the air changed, heavy with unsaid tension, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Victor's eyes immediately met mine. They were intense and black, filled with the same need that had drawn me in. He didn't have to say anything. I could tell everything I needed to know by the way he looked at me. The match was over. The point of no return had been reached. At last, he whispered in a low, menacing voice, "I can't stop thinking about you." His eyes never left mine as he stepped closer. "I think about you and nothing else, Isabel." My heart was thumping in my chest, and my pulse was getting faster. I wanted to push him away once more, but I couldn't find the right words. I was immobilized and unable to breathe as I stood there, trapped in his gravity. In 2 steps, Victor drew closer to me, pulling my face up to meet his eyes as his palm cupped my chin. Heat sparks raced through my body as a result of his electric touch. I shook, torn between wanting to go and wanting him to draw me closer. I shivered as he said, "I tried to stay away but I can't." His thumb grazing my bottom lip. "I'd prefer not to." His words gave me a sudden surge of need that made it impossible for me to fight or think about what I knew was coming. I was already leaning into him, wanting to feel his lips against mine and his warm skin. I desired him. I asked him. I said, "I can't do this," but I knew it was a lie even as I said it. I knew I was too far gone to stop now based on the way my body reacted to him and how my pulse raced whenever he came close. With his lips grazing my ear and his voice dark and full of promise, he said, "Yes, you can. This is what you desire. You desire me." His hand moved down to my waist and pulled me against him, causing me to moan quietly. He pushed me closer, his breath hot against my neck, and the heat between us was terrible, burning every nerve in my body. He snarled, his lips moving down my throat and chilling me as he said, "Tell me you don't want this. I will stop if you tell me to." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as my fingers tangled in his shirt, I drew him closer rather than pushing him away. He held me tightly, as if he never wanted to let go, and I could feel the strength in his arms and the hard planes of his body beneath my hands. "Victor?" With the weight of what we were going to accomplish, my voice was wavering and hardly more than a whisper. I was engrossed when his lips met mine, hot and demanding. The fire that had been raging between us for so long could not be extinguished. His hands were all over the place, claiming, investigating and erasing everything but the feelings he gave me. I couldn't get enough of his hot, desire-filled kiss and possessive touch. Tangled in one another, we staggered back till we struck the couch. With his hands on my waist, Victor drew me down onto his lap and gave me a passionate, intense kiss, as if he was scared I might vanish if he released his hold. I didn't vanish. I completely caved. I was unable to think clearly or concentrate on anything but him as his hands ran over my body. His lips on mine, his breath heated against my skin, and his hands made me forget about everything else. Nothing else mattered to me because I was engrossed in him and the way he made me feel alive. However, something broke just as the tension was about to explode. I froze in place as I heard a car door slam outside. With panic coursing through my veins, my heart halted. Mom. She arrived home early. As we both recognized what was happening, Victor stiffened beneath me and tightened his hold on my waist. As the sound of footsteps neared the front door, I clambered off his lap, my heart pounding. "We must stop," I muttered, my voice shaking with sorrow and terror. "She is unable to know." Victor stood straightening his clothes, his jaw clenched, his eyes black and unreadable. Even though the sound of the front door opening sent a shockwave through us, he remarked softly and confidently, "This isn't over." Before I could gather my breath, my mother entered the room and her upbeat voice filled the air. I tried to act normal, as though nothing was wrong, and I forced a grin despite my beating heart. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would the truth destroy everything, or could you keep the secret? I need to know I'm not alone in this, so please share your thoughts in the comments section. I felt suffocated by the secret. It weighed heavily on my chest every morning when I woke up, and I knew that it would all fall apart eventually when I went to bed each night. Even though Victor hadn't shoved me since that evening in the living room, I could tell it wasn't finished by the way he looked at me and the implicit promises that burned in his eyes. It would never end. My mother was unaware, fully engrossed in her daily routine, living her life as if nothing were amiss. But it was all wrong. I was mistaken. Victor and I were tense, like a quiet storm simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right opportunity to blow up. Things ultimately reached a breaking point on a Friday evening. I was alone with him when my mom left again. The home was too quiet, and as soon as the door behind her closed, I could feel the air getting thicker. I made an effort to divert my attention and appear as though nothing would happen, but my body knew better. I was unable to resist the pull toward him since it was stronger than before. I heard him coming while I was in the kitchen, idly doing the dishes. His steps were deliberate and slow, and my heart thumped harder in my chest with each one. I didn't need to turn around, so I didn't. I was aware that he was waiting and observing me. His voice sent chills down my spine as he whispered, "Isabel." Like a storm approaching, his presence became overwhelming as he drew nearer. I didn't answer. I was unable to trust myself or my voice. Rather, I held onto the sink's edge, My knuckles whitened as I struggled against the surge of need that swept over me. However, it was pointless. I could do nothing to stop him. I could feel the heat radiating off Victor's body as he moved closer until he was directly behind me. An electric shock went through me as his hand lightly and playful touched my arm. I bit my lip and closed my eyes to avoid making a sound, but my body was already turning against me and embracing his touch. He pressed his lips to my ear and said, "You can't keep avoiding this. You can't continue to avoid me." The sensation of his breath against my skin made me tremble, and every syllable made my heart race. His fingertips traced languid circles across my bare flesh as his hand traveled to my waist and slid under the hem of my shirt. As I fought to maintain my grounding and maintain some kind of control, my breath caught and my hold on the sink tightened, but it was slipping, quickly. Even though my voice was weak and wobbly, I managed to mumble, "I'm not avoiding you." With a quiet laugh, Victor gripped my waist tightly and drew me back to him. I was unable to focus on anything else because I could feel his strong body and his heat radiating into me. He said, "You're lying," as his lips touched the side of my neck, making me feel hot. "However, it's all right. I am aware of your desires." The fire that had been smoldering between us for so long was ignited by his words, which were like a match striking something deep inside of me. I was unable to resist it any longer. I had no desire to. The tension between us crackled like a live wire as I turned in his arms and met his eyes. As he looked down at me with a deep and intense gaze, his hands moved up to cup my face, his thumbs grazing my cheeks. "I want you," he whispered in a low, desperate voice. "I've desired you forever." Every part of me shook with anticipation as I peered up at him, my breath coming in short spurts and my heart thumping in my chest. The want that was running through me was too intense and overwhelming, even though I knew I should go and stop this before it got out of hand. I slipped the confession out of my mouth before I could stop it, whispering, "I want you too." It only required that. I was lost when Victor's lips smashed into mine. The kiss was intense, demanding, and filled with the long-suppressed yearning we had been suppressing. His hands moved over my body, drawing me in and squeezing me into him as if he and I could not get enough. I desired him. I asked him. Tangled in one another, we staggered back and collided with the kitchen counter. With his hands on my hips and his tongue caressing mine, Victor hoisted me onto it and sent waves of ecstasy through me as he kissed me. Eager for more, eager for anything, I put my legs around him and drew him in. I gasped as the cool air touched my skin as his hand moved beneath my shirt and lifted it over my head. But it was short-lived. Once more, his lips were on me, moving across my collarbone and down my neck, making me shudder every time. I held him to me with my fingers entangled in his hair because I needed to feel him, the warmth of his mouth against my flesh. His voice was hoarse with need as he whispered against my skin, "I've been waiting so long for this. So long." I was unable to talk. My body was shaking with anticipation as his hands felt every inch of me and I was breathing in short breaths. In the fire that was devouring us both, I was drowning in him and the way he made me feel. However, the front door banged as we were ready to cross the last line. My mother was at home. The sound of footsteps reverberated along the corridor, and we both stopped, our hearts thumping simultaneously. As I scurried down the counter and put my shirt back on, my mind racing and my heart racing, I was breathing in sharp breaths. As Victor fixed his clothes, his chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths, his jaw was taut, and his eyes were dark with frustration. With a quiet, hopeful voice he muttered, "This isn't over." Before I could even nod, my mother entered the kitchen, greeting us with bright, unblinking eyes, utterly ignorant to the recent storm. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would everything fall apart, or would you be able to keep the secret? I need to know I'm not alone in this, so please share your thoughts in the comments section below. My half-sister lied, saying I was a call girl and drug dealer, and I got kicked out. Years later, my dad's message on my wedding reopened old wounds. I'm Emma, and I would have laughed a year ago if you had told me that my own family would abandon me. However, that is precisely what took place, and it all began with Leah, my half-sister. Leah has always been dramatic, but I never thought one of her falsehoods would ruin my life. She had to be the center of attention all the time. Even though we were never very close, I made an effort to be a good big sister when I was growing up. Leah was born a few years after our dad remarried when I was 10 years old. She could do no wrong. She was the golden child. She was loved by my father and my stepmother, Margaret, and she understood how to take advantage of it. Leah was skilled at manipulating others, but I was unaware of how far she would go. At first it was subtle. Little remarks about me, such as Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's been staying out late, would be made by Leah to Dad and Margaret. I'm concerned for her. They didn't give it much thought at first. At the age of 24, I was living alone and attempting to make sense of my post-college life. However, Leah continued to sow doubt, and I was unaware of it until it was too late. My father called me one day. I sensed something was wrong because of the tension in his voice. He said, "We need to talk, Emma. Will you please come over?" Unaware that my entire world was going to fall apart, I went to their house. Margaret appeared to have made up her mind about me when I entered the living room, since she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Leah was also present, but she appeared far too innocent to be the person who had just turned my family against me. Dad wasted little time. "I need you to be honest with us about what Leah told us. Do you use drugs?" It was so ridiculous that I laughed. "What? No, of course not. What is the source of this?" Margaret squinted her eyes. "Leah reported that during your stay last weekend, she discovered some pills in your room." I went cold. I believed that Leah had not been in my room. Nothing suspicious was ever left there by me. "That is untrue. I have no idea what she is discussing." Leah, however, spoke out, her big eyes and phony worry evident. "Emma, I have been quite concerned about you, but I didn't want to say anything. I felt you might need help because of the unusual way you've been acting." I gaped in shock as I looked at her. "You're telling lies. Never in my life have I used drugs." However, what I stated was irrelevant. The untruth had already been ingrained in their heads by Leah. Margaret and Dad looked at each other, and I knew they trusted her more than I did. The fact that I had never before given them any cause to suspect me was irrelevant. Margaret continued. "That's not all. Leah said that you've had relationships with dubious individuals. Are you selling yourself, Emma?" It seemed as if someone had hit me. Because of what Leah said, my own stepmother, who had reared me for years, was accusing me of being a prostitute. It was unbelievable to me. "No, it's unbelievable that you would even ask me that. Leah is telling lies." Again though, it didn't feel like my words mattered. They were entangled in the web that Leah had spun. Dad continued. "Emma," in a softer tone now, as if he wanted to believe me but was unable to. "All we want to do is assist you. We must know if you are in difficulties." "I'm not having any problems." With tears in my eyes, I screamed, "Leah is deceiving you." Leah gave me a wide-eyed stare while continuing to play the innocent victim. "I'm only attempting to assist you, Emma. I don't want you to become involved in negative situations like some of my pals did." I was unable to bear to look at her. "You're intentionally doing this," I spit out. "You wish for them to despise me." Margaret got to her feet. "That's sufficient, Emma. We can't trust you unless you can be truthful with us. We must step back, even if we love you." Step back. They were expressing that they no longer wanted me around. That day, I felt numb when I left the house. Leah's falsehoods had caused my own family, who were meant to support me, to turn against me. I was at a loss for what to do. My mother lived across the nation, and although she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from such a distance. Worst of all, Leah continued to embellish her lies. She began spreading tales about me being a drug addict across the town. After hearing the rumors, my supervisor fired me because he didn't want an untrustworthy employee. My friends stopped phoning, and I felt even more alone. I lost everything because of Leah's lies: my reputation, my career, and my family. She was enjoying the attention as I was in a downward spiral. Whenever I attempted to approach her, she reframed the situation so that I appeared to be the unstable one. When Dad contacted me again to inform me that they no longer wanted me around, it was the last straw. "It's best if you stay away, Emma, until you can get help. You must not be around Leah. She has endured enough." Had enough? In their perspective, Leah was the victim, even though I had lost everything. I was finished. In an attempt to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a different city. However, the harm was already done. I wasn't sure whether my relationship with my family could ever be restored once it was destroyed. Months passed, and each time I considered contacting them, I recalled their initial reaction. As if I were a complete stranger rather than their daughter. For that, I couldn't forgive them, and I couldn't forgive Leah either. However, as time went on, I started to question whether Leah's actions were more complex. What type of individual would ruin someone's life by lying like that? Was she experiencing something more serious than jealousy? I had to move on with my life, with or without them, so it didn't really matter anymore. The agony of losing my family still aches a year after everything fell apart, even though I've been able to restore some of what I lost. I'm not sure if they'll ever expose Leah's deceit or if I'll ever be able to trust them again. One thing is certain though, they will have to confront the reality of Leah's true nature if they ever hope to have me back in their life. Holding my breath is not an option. It only grew worse after the altercation with my family. I made an effort to move on, but it wasn't that easy. The wound from the betrayal festered and got deeper every day. My life was tainted by Leah's falsehoods, and I was unable to avoid the repercussions. Not only did I lose my friends and work, but I also lost my identity. The final betrayal occurred when my father kicked me out of the house, challenging everything I believed to be true about myself. I can still clearly remember the day it happened. Desperate to convince my father of the truth, I had returned to his home. Perhaps if I calmly and directly explained everything to him, he would comprehend. I wanted to think that the father who reared me was still inside of him, the father who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to support me at soccer matches, and who always emphasized the importance of family comes first. I wanted my father to be like that again. However, I could feel the tension in the air as soon as I went through the door. Margaret was sitting with her arms folded in the kitchen, looking at me as if I were a nasty object that needed to be removed. Naturally, Leah was not present, but I knew she was there, most likely listening in the background while she waited for everything to fall apart the way she always desired. With a harsh expression on his face, my father stood at the kitchen counter as though he had already decided before I had a chance to say anything. I said, attempting to speak steadily, "Dad, we need to talk. You must hear my side of the story." The hush that followed his delayed response was oppressive. My heart was thumping louder in my throat with every second that went by. He sighed at last. "Emma, I'm not sure if I have anything more to say. You've been granted time. We have attempted to assist. You haven't assisted me at all." With a trembling voice, I shot back. "All you've heard is Leah. I can verify that everything she has told you is false. Just listen to me, please." I could feel Margaret's judgment stabbing me as she shook her head. "We've heard enough, Emma. Leah has just been worried for you and you haven't done anything to disprove her." I became so frustrated that I was unable to contain it any longer. "Leah is lying out of jealousy. This is how she receives the attention she has always desired. Do you not see? She's playing tricks on you." However, my words were ignored. My father's face remained unchanged. He wasn't even taking into account my version of events. "This isn't good for you or Leah," he stated in a quiet but forceful voice. "Emma, I believe it would be best if you stopped visiting, at least until you received assistance." "Ask for assistance." Incredulous, I repeated. "You believe that I am the one in need of assistance? Nothing has gone wrong on my end. You're tossing me out because of Leah's falsehoods, even though I'm not selling myself or using drugs." My dad's eyes become stony. "This hostility in the house is unacceptable. I apologize, but you must go." Margaret's lips formed a narrow line as she nodded in agreement. "It's best that way." Stunned, I stood there. It was this. I was their own kid, and they were choose Leah's lies above me. I had the impression that everything I had ever done for them, every loving moment, every memory we had together, was being instantly obliterated. I gave my father one last glance in the hopes that he might change his mind or show some glimmer of hesitation. However, nothing was present. I couldn't find him. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me with tears in my eyes. A final brutal punctuation to the life I had known, the sound reverberated in my mind. The initial months following expulsion were a haze of hopelessness. While I was trying to put my life back together, I moved in with a friend named Jessica, who graciously allowed me to rest on her couch. But despite my best efforts to divert my attention, I was unable to get rid of the sense of abandonment. My chest ached every time I saw a family in the park or heard someone talk about their parents. Leah's actions of turning everyone I cared about against me were on my mind constantly. Jessica made an effort to be encouraging, but it was clear that she didn't completely get what I was going through. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony, she said, "Perhaps you should just get in touch with them again. By now they might have calmed down. You could." "No," I cut in, my tone acrid. "I'm not wanted by them. They were quite explicit about that." She gave me a pitying glance, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but you can't truly comprehend what it's like to have your family turn against you, to be deceived by those who are meant to love you without conditions, unless you've been there yourself. It wasn't easy, but I tried to reconstruct my life over the next 5 years. Even in the new city, the rumors that Leah disseminated had followed me. There were whispers about me. I applied for employment, but every time I was turned down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was before. People's perceptions of me changed. They thought I was broken and unreliable. Then, almost 2 years after my expulsion, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. I was working at a little cafe on a Saturday afternoon. Even though it wasn't my ideal career, working as a barista was a reliable job that helped me pay my bills. A man entered when I was cleaning the counter. Although he had a somewhat familiar appearance, I was unable to identify him. He paused before asking, "Emma?" Curious, I turned to him. "Yeah?" He gave a clumsy smile. "I doubt that you recall me. I'm Leah's Dylan." When Leah's name was spoken, my stomach fell. Dylan. God, I now recalled him. When we were younger, he had dated Leah for a couple of years. Around the time Leah began spreading those stories about me, they broke up. Why on earth was he in this place? All I wanted to do was turn and leave, but I mustered a kind grin. "Oh, Dylan, I see. What's going on?" He raked a hand through his hair and shifted uneasily. "I realize this may seem strange, but I've been intending to speak with you for some time. After everything that has transpired, I simply need to clear my conscience, even if I wasn't sure if I should." I arched an eyebrow. "Clear your conscience?" He seemed truly sorry as he sighed. "It has to do with Leah and what she said about you. The prostitution and the drugs were all lies." My throat tightened each breath. It felt more genuine after hearing it from someone else who knew Leah well. I answered, "I know that," in a tone that was colder than I had intended. "But my family doesn't." Dylan looked at the floor and nodded. "I apologize, I understand. I should have spoken out sooner, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. She had her problems, Leah. Emma, she was always envious of you. I believe that's the reason she did it." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "Jealous of what?" "You," stated Dylan plainly. "You had your own life, were older, and were more self-reliant. Even if you were unaware of it, Leah always felt as though she was living in your shadow. She wanted attention, and when she saw that making you appear terrible would get it, she went for it. She told me about it after our breakup, although I was unaware of its full scope at the time. Despite her shame, she was unsure of how to stop. My mind was racing. Had Leah acknowledged it? Had she really admitted to fabricating it all? And Dylan had been aware all along. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Anger rising within me, I demanded. "This could have been avoided by you. Years ago my family could have learned the truth." Dylan repeated, "I'm sorry," in a low voice. I had no idea how. Leah has a way of making people question themselves, and I didn't think they would trust me. She also played with my head. Barely believing what I was hearing, I shook my head. Was jealousy the ultimate cause of all the suffering and heartache Leah had caused? That's why I was expelled by my father? That's why I lost everything in my life, my career, my family? Dylan waited for me to say something. But I was at a loss for words. I was no longer even able to look at him. I was only angry. I murmured, "You should go," and turned my back on him. He repeated, "Emma, I'm really sorry," one final time before slipping out of the cafe. I tried to stabilize myself as the weight of everything fell on me while I stood there clutching the counter. My life had been ruined by Leah's falsehoods, and it was all because she was envious. Finally, years later, I knew the truth. Now though, what good was it? I kept thinking about approaching Leah after that day. My anger was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It engulfed me, recreating every moment of betrayal and keeping me up at night. I was looking for answers. I wanted her to confess what she had done to everyone, including our father and me. Dylan had told me about Leah's deception years ago. I initially believed that learning the truth would bring some sort of closure, but it just served to reignite old hurts. I didn't need their apologies, especially not just now, because I had constructed my life without my family's love and support. For the first time in a long time, I was in a good place. More importantly, I had found someone who embraced me for who I was, without the baggage of my history, and I had a new career that I loved. Marketing for a nonprofit. 2 years ago, Noah and I met through common acquaintances, and things felt natural as soon as we spoke. He saw me, Emma, as the person I had become in spite of everything, without interfering in my family life or criticizing me for the strained ties. I thought my life was finally coming together again when Noah proposed. We were preparing a modest, low-key wedding. I didn't require a lavish party. It was important that we begin our new life together and create a family free from deceit and treachery. Life wasn't that easy, of course. It had been years since I had spoken to Margaret or my father. I severed all connections after they expelled me. I blocked them on social media, switched cities, and updated my phone number. Occasionally, I would learn through rumors that they wanted to know how I was doing, But I never answered. I remained silent even after Dylan came clean. How would I respond? That they blindly trusted Leah and believed a lie about me, their own daughter, and that I had to suffer as a result. For that I couldn't forgive them. Then, around 6 months into the planning of our wedding, I received an unexpected email. My father gave it to me. I opened the screen after staring at it for a very long time. As I read his words, my pulse raced in my chest. Since you departed, Emma, you have been on my mind every single day. I can't express how sorry I am for all that has transpired, and I know we made a grave error by choosing to believe Leah over you. Margaret and I want to put things right because we miss you more than words can express. I've heard that you're getting married via a pal. As I've always dreamed, I would adore being there to accompany you down the aisle. Give me an opportunity to express my regret, Emma. With trembling hands I set down my phone. Did he wish to apologize? After all these years. He wanted to make amends after what they had done to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Noah asked me what was going on after noticing that I was preoccupied, but I was at a loss for words. I hadn't told him anything that had transpired with my family. Although he was aware of their absence from my life, he was unaware of the depth of the betrayal. It felt almost like another lifetime since I had buried it so deeply. I finally sat Noah down one evening and told him everything, including about Leah, my father, and Margaret, and how they had abandoned me when I most needed them. I informed him about Dylan's confession and how I still couldn't forgive them despite knowing the truth. With a contemplative expression on his face, Noah listened patiently without pressuring me to make a choice. There is nothing you owe them, he added quietly. You are free to choose not to have them at the wedding. Emma, this is your day. Our future is at stake, not the past. I was reassured by his remarks, but they didn't help me decide. Even though I knew my family would never be the same, I still felt a part of me miss them. I wanted my father to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, to escort me down the aisle. However, could I truly pardon them for their actions? I finally responded to my father's email 1 week later. I told him that although I was grateful for the apology, I wasn't prepared to move on. The devastation was too great. However, I was willing to allow him to attend the wedding if he realized that our relationship would never be the same. Margaret and Leah weren't invited. There was no negotiating that. My phone rang 2 days after I sent that email. Even though I didn't recognize the number, I felt compelled to take it up. My father's voice was tremulous and emotional as he said, Emma. At first I remained silent. I waited for him to say something, just listening. At last, he said, I received your email. I'm thrilled that you'll allow me to attend the wedding, but I must beg. Will you not extend an invitation to Leah? My stomach turned over. I could see where this was headed. No, father, Leah is not invited? You understand why. The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. His breathing was audible as he deliberated over his next sentence. She's your sister, Emma. She is still family. Even though I know what she did was horrible. Since then, she has matured significantly. She wants to make amends and is remorseful for what she done. I could sense my old wrath building. Leah ruined my life, Dad. You and Margaret blindly believed her lies, and I lost everything as a result. She cannot simply attend my wedding and act as like nothing is wrong. I get that, he responded in a beseeching tone. However, this is an opportunity for us to reunite and begin our family's healing process. If Leah isn't at your wedding, I can't attend. It wouldn't be appropriate. I went cold, a command. On my wedding day, he was threatening to not attend unless I included the guy who destroyed my life. Are you serious at this moment? My voice was thick with incredulity as I asked. Emma, I'm not kidding. I can't abandon Leah, even though I want to be there for you because I love you. She is also my daughter. I had the feeling that I would get sick. Are you really going to pick her over me once more? My voice quivered with anger as I asked. You're still supporting her in spite of everything that's happened? It's not about sides, he shouted frantically. It has to do with family. We must unite. No, I responded in a hard, icy tone. We wanted you to be there for me when I needed you. You didn't. And now you're attempting to spoil my happiness once more. Please don't do this, Emma, he pleaded. This can be fixed. No, we can't, Dad. My hand trembled as I hung up. My eyes were watering, but I fought the need to cry. I refused to let him, Leah, or anybody else ruin this day. To get here, I had had to fight too hard. It was bittersweet in the months before the wedding. On the one hand, I was getting married to my soulmate. My father, on the other hand, would not be present. Even though I stuck by my decision, It still stung. I secretly hoped that he would pick me, that he would see how much suffering he had caused by supporting Leah all those years ago. However, he didn't. He was unable to. I made an effort to concentrate on the positive aspects, such as selecting the ideal outfit, deciding on the food, and selecting flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel. Throughout it all, Noah was encouraging and never pushed me to bring Leah or my father. He saw that this wedding was not about the shattered remnants of my past, but rather about us and our future. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's absence as the day drew near. My mom lived across the country, and we were no longer close, so I knew she couldn't make it. Although I didn't hold it against her, her attempt to maintain her objectivity during the whole situation with Leah caused a gulf between us that we were never able to fully close. Rachel threw me a tiny bachelorette party the night before the wedding. Just some nice laughter, lots of wine, and a few close friends. I was able to put everything else aside and simply have fun for a few hours. However, once the party ended and my friends departed, I was left sitting by myself in my apartment, gazing at my own wedding invitation. Even though I knew my father wouldn't show up, I had mailed him one. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to completely remove him from my life. However, another part of me, possibly the one that still missed the family I lost, was unable to do it. When the wedding day finally came, it was just as I had imagined. As Noah and I stood at the altar with our selected family and friends, the sun shone and the air was warm, and I felt at ease. My decision had been the right one. My dad wasn't present. Leah wasn't either. And I wasn't burdened by their absence for the first time. They weren't necessary for me to prove that I was happy and that I had moved on. It was sufficient that I had discovered my own happiness and my own family. I experienced a sense of closure as Noah and I exchanged vows, not the type that comes from reconciliation or forgiveness, but rather from making your own decisions and accepting that some scars cannot be healed. I felt liberated as we danced beneath the stars following the wedding. I had allowed the hurt of my family's betrayal to define me for a very long time, but now that I was standing next to Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. Nothing, not Leah, not my father, not anyone, could take away the love and trust I had forged in my new existence. I felt whole for the first time in years. The day of the wedding had been ideal. I felt at peace for the first time in years as Noah and I stood at the altar. It was the start of a new chapter in my life, one free from the heartache, deceit, and betrayals of the past. For the first time, I gave myself permission to think that I could create a life without my family's shadow. However, reality struck in as Noah and I returned from our brief honeymoon in the days after the wedding. I felt burdened by my choice to sever my relationship with Margaret, Leah, and my father. They hadn't offered an apology or a last-minute request for pardon. By refusing to invite Leah and refusing to back down when my father gave me his ultimatum, I had made it plain that I was done. However, after you make those choices, the world doesn't end. Individuals change, and occasionally they spiral. 2 months or so after the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My blood raced cold when I heard the message after I had left it on voicemail. "This is Margaret, Emma, please give me a call back. It's Leah. She's in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. Emma, please, we need you." I went cold. Leah had attempted suicide. I felt sick to my stomach for a moment. The sister that had destroyed my life, lied about me, and split up my family, Leah, was in the hospital after attempting suicide. I suppressed the guilt that washed over me. I was not at blame for this. I wasn't accountable for Leah's decisions. She had made them on her own. Nevertheless, it troubled me that Margaret had contacted me and begged me to come. In an attempt to determine Margaret's tone, I listened to the voicemail once more. Was it a desperate move? Fear? Feeling guilty? I had no idea. She was urging me to return to the mess I had worked so hard to escape, even though I hadn't spoken to her since I had gone. At last, I plucked up the confidence to tell Noah as he was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I said as neutrally as possible, "I got a voicemail from Margaret. Leah is in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm." His forehead was wrinkled with worry as he looked up from the stove. "What was it she said? Is Leah all right?" I acknowledged. They didn't give much detail. Margaret immediately asked me to come to the hospital after saying she was there. She sounded frantic. After wiping his hands on a towel, Noah approached me and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "How are you going to proceed?" "Uncertain," I shrugged. "I'm not sure. After years of attempting to escape them all and the harm they inflicted, I feel as though I'm being pulled back into it. I'm not sure if I can make it." Noah spoke in a soft yet forceful tone. "You owe them nothing, Emma. Your family made their decisions and Leah made hers. You are not accountable for her or her fate. Even though his statements confirmed what I was thinking, it didn't help me decide. There was a part of me that felt obligated, the part that still remembered Leah as the young child I had once attempted to be a big sister to. However, my logical side, which had established a life free of their poison, understood I couldn't turn back. I stayed up that night reliving the things that had brought us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the lies told by Leah, and the numerous times my father had picked her over me. With Leah in such a vulnerable state, was it really possible for me to return to their life at this point? What would that achieve? I considered the potential consequences of actually visiting the hospital. How would I respond? Would they want me to overlook Leah's suffering because she was in a horrible position and forgive her? What if I wasn't able to forgive her? What would happen if I went and it made things worse? I decided what I would do the following morning. I had no intention of going. I could tell Noah was worried, but he was on my side. Are you certain? He inquired. I don't want you to come to regret this. I tried to persuade myself as much as he did, saying, I'm sure. Leah got here because of her decisions. I've wasted too much time attempting to make things right that weren't my responsibility. I refused to be coerced into returning by their guilt. I didn't call Margaret back as a result. I chose not to visit the hospital. I stayed away because I preferred the tranquility I had battled so hard to the mayhem my family constantly brought. I got another message a few weeks later, this time from my dad. His voice was something I had not heard since the wedding ultimatum. It's Dad, Emma. I can see why you might be upset, but Leah is now in treatment and I believe it would be very meaningful for her if you came to see her. She is receiving assistance. She is attempting to atone for her actions and has acknowledged what she done. I realize this is a lot to ask, but perhaps it's time for the family to begin mending. Please give it some thought. I didn't respond, so I erased the mail. Leah was in treatment. My father said she was seeking assistance and confessing to all she did. However, I was wise enough to avoid becoming entangled in that web again. Even if Leah was making amends now, it didn't negate what she had done to me. She had been manipulating others for years. The years of harm and the reality that my family had deserted me when I most needed them were not undone by it. I got additional messages in the weeks that followed. Margaret called multiple times and left heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing their desire to reunite as a family and how Leah was getting better. To give Leah a chance, my father texted me to come see her in the rehab center, but I consistently ignored him. I had already decided. About 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I happened to run into Dylan one afternoon. It came as a complete surprise. On a bright Saturday, Noah and I were having lunch when I noticed him across the street. At the same moment he noticed me and he approached before I could dodge him. Emma, he murmured with a startled tone. I was surprised to see you here. A rush of unease washed over me as I attempted a grin. Since Dylan told me about Leah's falsehoods years ago, I hadn't seen him. It felt weird to see him now, after everything. Yeah, just out with Noah, I said, nodding to my husband, who was observing us from the cafe table with interest. After a little pause, Dylan resumed his conversation. I'm not trying to bother you, but have you heard anything about Leah? I tensed up. Enough has been said. He went on, disregarding the icy tone in my voice. She's in rehab. Emma, she's making a sincere effort. She has now acknowledged everything, even though I know she damaged you. Perhaps she is resolving her problems. I interjected, my voice hard. Dylan, stop. I'm glad she's receiving assistance, but it doesn't make a difference in my opinion. I've moved on. Dylan's eyes were a mix of grief and pity as he gazed at me. I truly understand. However, Emma, individuals can change. Perhaps Leah is attempting to make amends. I became impatient and yelled, I don't need her amends. I have no obligation to her. Her falsehoods caused me to suffer for years. Because she feels bad, I won't allow her back into my life at this time. Dylan let out a sigh, obviously understanding that he couldn't make me change my decision. All right, I simply felt you ought to be aware. I wanted the talk to stop, so I nodded. I appreciate you telling me. Before leaving, he offered me a melancholy little smile. After observing him leave, Noah turned to face me. Are you all right? Even though I wasn't positive, I nodded. Dylan had reminded me of past pains and memories, but I wasn't going to allow it to take me back there. I said, I'm fine, attempting to put the encounter behind me. All I want to do is concentrate on us and our lives. The texts from Margaret and my father became less frequent over time. I didn't care that Leah had finished her time in rehab and seemed to be doing well. I had decided to permanently cut them off, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Late at night, I would occasionally ponder what my life could have been like if my father had never believed Leah and she had never told those falsehoods. Would our family still exist? Would the course of events have been different? However, those sentiments were short-lived, and I consistently ignored them. With Noah, I now had my own family. For me, it was sufficient that we were creating a life together free from the poisonous dynamics of my past. The calls eventually ceased completely. Despite their entreaties, my father and Margaret must have recognized that I was not returning. Leah also appeared to realize that she couldn't repair what she had damaged. So I put the past behind me, where it belonged, and moved on. My best friend invited the guy who raped me while I was unconscious to her wedding, forcing me to confront the buried trauma. Original post. I've been stewing with this info in my head nonstop and I can't seem to get over the icky feeling this entire situation gives me. I, 24F, have known Abigail, 24F, since sophomore year in high school. We've been through a lot and I consider us extremely close. After not seeing each other for a few months due to life circumstances and adulting schedules, we met for dinner last week. Everything was going great, just the usual bullshitting and talking about everything under the sun. The topic of Abigail's wedding came up because I'm also a bridesmaid in it. She proceeded to drop a bomb on me by telling me her fiancé and my ex-boyfriend have been actively hanging out. To top it all off, he's even invited to the wedding. A backstory to the situation. I was with my ex for about 4 years. We lived together and were actively talking about eloping soon. I have a seizure disorder and one night when I had one, he proceeded to have sex with me while I was unconscious. If it wasn't for the dried fluids on me the next morning, I would have never known because my memory is not worth a shit after a seizure. Because of the obvious betrayal of trust and boundaries, I immediately kicked him out. This was over 2 years ago and I still actively struggle with people being around me when I'm having seizures. Therapy has helped a lot, but I'm still not 100% healed from the entire ordeal. Am I blowing this out of proportion? I'm trying with all my might to not make a big scene out of all this. But on the opposite end, I am completely heartbroken that she would even allow him to be invited from the get-go. Mainly, I just need an outsider's perspective on this before I completely melt my brain from thinking about every possible angle of this ordeal in its entirety. Update, same day. I feel like I need to come back on here after getting some private messages of some people coming for my neck. Yes, I'm well aware I was raped. I apologize for not using that word, any of you could hopefully understand why that's hard for me to use to this day. Anyways, I appreciate all of you for the tough love. In all reality, I would really like to just crawl in a hole and stay there until the end of the year. This discussion has opened a few more doors than I anticipated, but I know it's for the better. Thank you all again, this means a lot more than you will ever know. I'll update once I've gained a bit more footing on my emotions, thoughts. Relevant comments. OOP should talk with her bestie about the situation and get her ex uninvited from the wedding. OOP. She does it fact no, same with her fiancé. This entire situation sucks. Definitely simmering on stepping away even though I've spent a fair amount of money on preparation for the wedding. Commenter 1, I would question why they expect you to be there. It's not exactly kind or sensitive of them. Commenter 2, because they don't think it's such a big thing. Because it didn't happen to them. So OP is just being dramatic about sex with her then BF. Per S I mean who has time to check for consent, right? Per S times 2. OOP, this comment is right here. This is exactly why I've quit talking about the situation altogether because people either understand where I'm coming from, or they don't. I lost relationships with people I thought I would have in my life forever because of them saying the simple statement of but he's your boyfriend. Literally the most thick-skulled remark to tell someone. It's so traumatic and soul-crushing to share this kind of info with someone, only for them to make those exact same remarks that you listed. Thank you for pointing it out because you're 100% right. Commenter 3. That's so disgusting. How does a man get hard and rape an unconscious woman anyway? I'll never understand. Like you can't move or speak, it's like he's raping a corpse. How could anyone do that? Then she is okay with her fiancé hanging out with a rapist that makes her a POS too. The fuck? I'm so angry at you. OOP, exactly. The events that unfolded that night have changed my relationship with my body/mind for the rest of my life. It was like my entire world burned to the ground in a matter of minutes. Update. Hi everyone. It's been a rough journey, but I hope you all are going to be proud of the outcome. After wearing rose-colored glasses the last couple of months, they were finally ripped off my face on Sunday. I received the confirmation that he was in fact going to be attending. To also point out, the confirmation was through a very cold text message treating this as some kind of sarcastic breaking news story. I was truly taken aback because, as I stated, I was in denial that it wouldn't actually happen, but the proof was right in front of me. Had to sit down with myself and my journal to really break my feelings down. After a few hours, I sent a lengthy reply back stating I was in fact not going to be attending and to count me out. Along with my reasoning as to why, even though she's well aware of the full story. Her response back to me was completely heartbreaking and a cop-out, even though I shouldn't have been surprised. She's not in my corner, you all stated that, I just didn't want to believe it, and doesn't deserve me in hers. I've done so much and spent so much trying to help with this stupid wedding. Should have thrown it out the window or taken it myself to get a tattoo. But that's life and you live and learn. Anyways, sorry for the rambled mess. But I appreciate you all being so kind to me when I truly needed it. I am struggling with the situation because it's hard to wrap my head around her justifications in the message she sent back. But I will be okay. I'm talking to my therapist about it and will work on healing. Sending love to everyone who's kept up with this shit show. Would love to hear of everyone's thoughts on the matter because it's been very therapeutic to me. Additional information from OOP regarding her friend's thoughts. OP, no problem at all. Although I will warn everyone who reads the following message is going to be pissed off. I know I was. She was literally talking in circles and contradicting herself and her so-called moral compass. Here is the message with names taken out. I expressed my concerns to fiancé's name, and always told him I am and always would be on my girl's side regardless. I cannot control who he hangs out with. I don't want to be that person with anyone, never have, never will. It's a terrible situation with everything, but in this particular event I have to put fiancé name first. It's his day, his wedding just like mine, and if he wants someone there, I don't feel right or don't know how to tell him no. That might be crappy of me and I get it, but it puts me in a weird middle situation that I definitely don't know how to handle best. I fully expected that it would cause you to not want to come, and I completely understand, even though I'd prefer you there of course, but I knew you would have to do what is best for yourself. But the claim that I don't care, haven't cared makes me a little speechless. I don't really know how to respond to that, so we'll just leave it. I always have and always will fully support you with whatever you feel you need to do regardless. I'm truly and deeply sorry that this situation has caused you to feel this way about me, and I know nothing I say do at this point will change that. I wish you the best always. OOP's friend is being a doormat. OOP, I have fought for her in her idiotic ways ever since we became friends. She's needed me on multiple occasions due to them having relationship issues. He's an asshole, shocker I know, and guess who would drop everything to be there for her? Me. They will not last. I know that's awful for me to say, but it's just the way it is. Did OOP's friend knew about her situation with the ex-OOP? Unfortunately, she's the second person. Mom was first. I told, and it was the morning I kicked him out. She even helped me get a shower and all the ickiness off me because I was hysterical. She will never hear or see from me again. I can tell you that. She's made her bed. Commenter. I'm so sorry, Op. She was never a true friend and you deserve so much better than that. You don't hurt the people you love like this. You are way better off without her. Cheering on you for your healing journey. You're doing great. Am I the asshole for just saying okay and walking away disgusted when my fiancé blamed me for ruining his life and broke up in a rant? Edit, thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest, lol. Just to clarify though, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly, something is going on. But he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat as my ex was really allergic. So, IDK man. I, 28, have been with my fiancé, Alex 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off and have been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then he has been working at the uni. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD. Okay, so the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly, just weird. For the past few months he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples, he told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again. Even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, The house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine, but he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about: the apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then, on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me, first because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable, and he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially, and he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our fucking crockpot. Then he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only, he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, "I'm done." I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt, but after that rant I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, "Okay." He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years and all I had to say was okay to our breakup. I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, "Typical, of course you're holding the apartment over me," and started ranting again, so I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50th financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know. Should I have reacted differently? I tried to fulfill my girlfriend's fantasy by buying a male sex doll, but it backfired. Now she enjoys it more than I do. My GF shared a role-play fantasy with me during the early stages of our relationship. By her own admission, she never expected our relationship to grow into something serious, so the purpose of her sharing this specific fantasy on one of our dates didn't feel like anything she wanted the two of us to actually do. It was a trivial topic between two people who didn't see a long-term future with each other and therefore felt comfortable discussing our absurd fantasies. This is how my GF explained her fantasy to me. She catches her supposedly straight BF fucking a male sex doll, which turns her on and prompts her to encourage him to continue fucking the doll while she watches and masturbates. No idea how I reacted at the time, but I always remembered my GF struggling to balance her embarrassment with her enthusiasm, which was wholesome as fuck and made me like her even more. I liked her so much that I wanted to keep seeing her, and thankfully the feeling was mutual. We eventually became GF and BF and life continued. My GF never referenced the gay sex doll fantasy again, even when we experimented with a variety of other role-play fantasies in the bedroom. I never forgot, and I figured it would be kind of cool to celebrate our 1-year anniversary by exploring the fantasy my GF shared with me when I was nothing more to her than a guy she just wanted to have fun with in her free time. I decided to keep it as a surprise and let my GF believe that our anniversary dinner was as special as things were going to get that night. But little did she know that I secretly made all the necessary arrangements to bring her homoerotic fantasy to life. The plan was simple. Go out for dinner. Come home. Cuddle on the couch. However, mid-cuddle, I would go to the bathroom, but that would be an act because I would not be going to the bathroom at all. I would instead beeline for the bedroom where I would get undressed and proceed to get things going with my male sex doll, which I ordered online weeks ago and managed to keep hidden until that moment. The idea being that my GF would begin to wonder where the fuck I was and then eventually find me balls deep inside the rubber butt of a lifelike sex toy. I was hoping that by the time my GF opened the bedroom door, I would have managed to get it up, get it in and somehow make it look like I'm not just fucking an inanimate object but the object of my deepest desire. Needless to say, I had to be hard to fuck the doll, which proved to be hard to do because, you know, it was a fucking doll. With a dick. Not exactly my type. I never even heard my GF approach my bedroom because I was too focused on forcing my penis to cooperate. As soon as the bedroom door swung open, my GF and I saw each other and both of us fucking froze. My GF covered her mouth with her hand and asked if I was gonna explain what the fuck was happening. I jokingly said she always wanted to be with a guy who was into fucking twink sex dolls up the ass. My GF laughed and said she had no idea what I was talking about, but she was keen to know more. I reminded her of the moment at the beginning of our relationship when she revealed that she fantasized about a role-play situation where she catches her BF fucking a male sex doll and then she ends up enjoying the show. My GF gradually stopped laughing and said she most definitely would have remembered something as specific as that, and yet, she struggled to remember anything like that ever being discussed between the two of us or anyone else. I said I remembered though. Hence the fuckable mannequin I was failing to fuck. My GF stopped saying she didn't remember what I was talking about and low-key switched to disagreeing with me that she ever shared a fantasy like that with anyone because she refused to believe it was something she would think of, let alone enjoy. I made it clear to her that I would never have purchased a male sex doll, much less go as far as to fuck the thing, if it wasn't for the fact that I remembered her talking about how hot that was for her. My GF asked if one of us was gaslighting the other or if maybe one of us, aka me, was feeling somewhat ashamed about what was going on in the room before she walked in. I said I was feeling frustrated that she was refusing to even entertain the idea that she might have had this fantasy and communicated it with me. My GF said maybe I was confusing her with an ex-GF who enjoyed watching straight guys doing gay stuff. I decided to shut up and get dressed because I didn't understand what was going on anymore. My GF inspected the sex doll while continuing to question me about this so-called fantasy of hers that she was convinced was in fact my fantasy. She wondered if it was just her that thought the sex doll kind of looked like my best friend. I kissed her and said happy anniversary before I reiterated that this was all for her. My GF asked if that meant she could use the sex doll too. I said since both my dick and my chick, I never actually said chick, are not into me using the doll, then I would have no use for it, so consider it an anniversary gift. My GF thanked me and said she appreciated how vulnerable I was willing to be in front of her, regardless of whose fantasy it was. It's been a month since the night of our anniversary and one thing has become apparent to me. My GF loves the sex doll. In fact, she's been fucking it more than she fucks me, but she denies it, which seems to be something she does a lot when it comes to the sex doll. I wish I could go back in time and tell past me to avoid buying a sex doll and save the money for a PS5 or some shit. TLDR bought a male sex doll, which I planned to have sex with in front of my GF, who once said she had a fantasy of watching her BF fuck a male sex doll. Realized I fucked up when A, I struggled to get hard, B, my GF denied ever having such a fantasy, thus making me look low-key gay, and C, my GF now enjoys fucking the sex doll more than she fucks me, which she denies too. Comments Firelight 3. Anyone going to talk about how she said she thought it looked like his best friend and now she wants to fuck it all the time? LOL OOP. It didn't go over my head. I just didn't take the bait. I knew the best friend comment was an attempt to make me feel even more awkward about trying to fuck a doll with a dick. That doll looks nothing like my best friend. If it did, then my best friend should audition for a role in Team America. Catter0223 I just want to know how far he went. Is it one of those novelty blow-up dolls they's more pool float than doll? Or did bro splurge on a $3,000 real doll? OOP I went for the closest thing to real as possible because I foolishly thought the blow-up version might end up being too comical and potentially take my GF out of the moment. But that happened anyway. Paid $2.199 for a model named Max, but the true cost appears to be my relationship. What is this a cantad dude? What are you even doing being in a relationship with someone like this? OOP This might come as a surprise based on my post, but excluding recent events, my GF made me happy. I detected no relationship ending red flags until now. I'm not sure what to call what's been happening to us since the sex doll situation, But she's beginning to show me a side to her that I didn't even know existed. My friend planted a seed in my head when I shared this story with him. He believes my GF wants to break up with me for whatever reason, and the sex doll unexpectedly became a possible exit strategy. Hence the gaslighting and the sex doll fucking. Rightmar 1423. She denies telling you about fantasy. Makes you feel awkward when you tried to do something special on your anniversary. Tells you the doll looks like your best friend, and on top of it all, she fucks it more than she does you. Something is off about here. And I think you need to have serious talk with your girlfriend before the seed your friends has planted into your head grows into doubts and resentfulness, and in the end destroying this relationship from the inside. Update. October 16, 2024. I made the mistake of purchasing a male sex doll for the purpose of fulfilling the homoerotic fantasy my GF pitched to me at the beginning of our relationship, which was that she fantasized about watching a guy fuck a male sex doll. I thought I was prepared to bring the fantasy to life, but I realized I fucked up when my GF walked in on me struggling to fuck the sex doll because I was unable to get hard, and then she informed me that she never had that fantasy, which convinced her that I must have misunderstood her or imagined the whole fucking thing. What happened for weeks afterwards was my GF sticking to the narrative that she never shared that fantasy with me, and then making the decision to fuck the sex doll since I no longer had any use for it. When I recently shared my story on Reddit, mods removed my original post. The comments were kind of split between my GF gaslighting me and me misremembering what she said. My GF and I basically agreed to disagree about the origin story of the fantasy and moved on. In an attempt to finally embrace the awkwardness of the situation, I decided to follow the advice of a few Redditors and proposed a threesome featuring me, my GF, and the sex doll she was apparently fucking. My GF laughed and said I was investing too much time thinking about the sex doll before telling me that she's actually never been intimate with the sex doll. She unexpectedly confessed that she was playfully planting seeds in my head to make me believe that she was fucking the sex doll because she didn't know what the fuck to make of the fantasy. I believed she came up with it. So instead of prolonging a fantasy that none of us were enjoying, she improvised and incorporated ingredients that she thought would spice things up, hence her month-long mind fuckery to make me feel like I'm competing in the bedroom against a humanoid sex toy. My GF and I had a long conversation about transparency. She said she appreciated that I was willing to be vulnerable for the purpose of pleasing her, but to avoid uncomfortable situations or misunderstandings, she encouraged me to rather inform her about things that involve fantasies and kinks, especially if I'm going to end up spending money on expensive sex dolls. I apologized and also encouraged her to follow her own advice and keep me in the loop if she was going to play mind games. As soon as my GF and I cleared the air, we were left wondering if a threesome with the sex doll was still something we wanted to do. I was leaning towards leaving the sex doll out of the bedroom and out of our lives forever, but my GF seemed keen to want to see me fucking the doll since that was apparently her fantasy according to me. So as a couple, we decided to fuck the sex doll together. And you know what? It fucking sucked. My GF, who had the sex doll in her possession, didn't tell me that her dog somehow managed to find the sex doll and eat parts of it. When I saw the doll in front of me, it had chunks of hair missing on its head, its top lip was ripped off, and both nipples were gone. It was the stuff of nightmares. My GF was very apologetic and quick to point out that everything below the waist was still in one piece, so it was still fuckable, but all I saw was the thousands that I regrettably spent on a realistic sex doll that now looked like Jim Carrey as Fire Marshal Bill. Anyway, so I butt-fucked Bill, but I was only able to get it up because my GF offered to give me a hand. It was the most shameful orgasm I've ever had. My GF had a hard time making eye contact with me afterwards without laughing. Worst sex I've ever had mixed with the worst money-making decision I've ever made. TLDR, coming back from my original post, which has been removed, my GF and I made peace and decided to fuck the sex doll together. The sex was absolutely terrible and the sex doll looked fucked up because my GF accidentally allowed her dog to destroy it. So, not only was the sex the absolute worst, but I literally fucked away thousands out of my bank account because I'm unable to return the sex doll now that it's been deformed. Comments Rush 2049. If this story is true, and it's odd enough that I think it actually could be, you need to seriously reconsider your relationship. This is way too much energy into mind games over something that was supposed to be a thoughtful gift for her. Then she didn't take care of the asset either, and instead of returning it, she destroyed it. Fucking weak-ass behavior in a partner, and this situation almost reads like she's getting a kick out of seeing you be embarrassed. You're not having sex for months. This story makes me think your girlfriend sucks. I hate comparing my GF to my exes, but I can guarantee that most of my exes, if not all of them, would have buried the sex doll fantasy that night if this was some kind of misinterpretation from my side and not something they were into. None of them would have exploited my fuck up and low-key extended what was an obvious failed attempt on my end at being thoughtfully kinky. On the surface, there seems to be peace between me and my GF, but I have a feeling that the sex doll might have indirectly exposed the cracks in my relationship. Anyway, this is what I'm saying now. Tomorrow I might just feel like I was overthinking everything and regret this comment. JWatts 1973. The funniest part of the story is how you think a non-deformed sex doll is returnable. Am I the asshole for leaving after my partner stopped the pill and tampered with condoms to get pregnant against my will? Original post. My partner has been on the pill throughout our relationship and we've been in a bit of a battle these past few weeks over having children. I categorically said that I don't want them and started using condoms for double protection. This morning, she told me that she's pregnant and I asked how this could happen when we'd been so careful. She admitted to coming off the pill and piercing through the condoms that we have stored. I've said that I don't want this and that I'm not up for marrying into a relationship based on lies. She says she's keeping it and has already told her friends as according to her, she'd done the test 8 weeks ago and was keeping it quiet in the hopes that I'd change my mind. I have no idea what to do here. Help. I am in England and am 29. Update. Firstly, thanks so much for all your comments. I didn't expect this to blow up quite so much as it did. Secondly, I want to get a few things straight as people seem to be struggling with timelines. A. My partner and I were due to get married in a few short weeks. We have had many long and involved conversations during our relationship about us both wanting to remain a child-free family over the years that we have been together. Around 2-3 months ago, they started to appear to change their mind, which I feel insecure and unhappy about as it is not something that I want from life, which is why I'd booked a vasectomy through the NHS. I cannot afford to go private as money is very tight, again another reason I do not want children. B. She admitted to tampering with condoms and said that she'd come off the pill several weeks ago. At that point, prior to her saying that kids might be an option for her, we were still having sex and I was under the impression that we were protected as she was on the pill. I have made no secret about how I do not want kids and she is fully aware of my reasons behind that, which I do not have to share with strangers on the internet. C. She has shown me a test and it confirms that she is pregnant. I have asked that she get an abortion. She has refused and I feel the trust has gone completely from our relationship. We are now in the process of canceling the engagement, which she isn't happy with at all and has said that I'm ruining her life. Now, for those people telling me to go to therapy, man up or that I'm lying. It's great that you disagree with me but I'd never tell you to attend therapy if your worldview differed to mine, that I should be at fault after my partner has lied to me, apparently for months, and that I'm a liar. Here's a few other things for you. No, I do not like kids and I don't like entitled parents. I see it the same as disliking dogs, cats or birds. That is my opinion. Not for everyone and not all people have to tolerate your madness. My disinterest and lack of care towards them is one of the many reasons why it would be idiotic for me to be a father. Those calling bullshit on the 21+ wedding venue thing are just wrong. It's a stipulation of the venue we chose, nothing more and nothing less. The plain thing happened several years ago. The smoking area fiasco occurred over a year ago. Colleagues bringing their newborns into work is a continued pain and just really gets my goat, just like some people don't like Susan to eat her tuna mayo baguette. It shows a complete and utter lack of etiquette and thought by parents who are coming out in their droves to tell me how wrong I am about their decision. We'll provide updates as and when I get through all the comments. Be kind, people. Update 2. I spoke to a lawyer earlier today who has advised that as we are not married that I won't automatically be added to the birth certificate. Woohoo! My ex-partner can still claim that I'm the biological father but without my consent to a DNA test is unlikely to be able to prove it, unless it is ordered by the court, but as I've been coerced into this my lawyer thinks ex-partner and family will back down as I have evidence. The lawyer advised that I don't waive my parental rights yet as it would indicate that I still believe the fetus could be mine. So I just have to bide my time and leave the country till this all blows over. The lawyer also suggested that I go self-employed but didn't divulge the specifics. My ex-partner has admitted to coming off birth control and piercing the condoms, which she said she'd done around 3 months ago, as she knew I was due a vasectomy early next week and thought I'd change my mind. She has refused to have an abortion, which is her right, and I've refused any involvement. Has anyone been through this before and managed not to pay out? I think I've got a pretty good case. Update 3. My ex-partner is going to keep the baby. She wants me to be involved in her life and says she doesn't want to lose me over something like this. A life-changing unwanted event? Yeah, sure, haha. I have said that I will be having nothing to do with this mistake and that all responsibility now lies with her and her family. She has been blocked from using any form of mobile communication with me, and I have now been sent 3 letters by her to my parents' house. The last letter included a scan of the embryo and a note requesting that I submit a DNA sample. The scan has confirmed that she is 13-14 weeks pregnant, which means that she kept this hidden for a good chunk of time. She has said that she will not have an abortion as this is what she always wanted, and that she will be taking me to court if I don't offer to help. The more time that goes on, the more she makes this an awful situation, the more I hate her. I refused the DNA test and sent her screenshots, on my lawyer's advice, of the conversation where she admitted to coming off the pill and piercing condoms in an attempt to get pregnant. She has now gone quiet, until this morning. She is pursuing legal action against me, my family, and is looking for a private arrangement of child support. The amount she wants for this bag of cells is triple the recommended amount via the government, and is one of the reasons she is trying to get me to admit that it's my DNA in that embryo so that I can keep me. I have just lost my job. I have no savings. This is going to ruin me. My life, and the only way out that I can think of is just to run off a cliff and hope for the best. I hate this. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP received mixed reactions. Relevant comments. OOP on having the conversation with his partner about children. OOP. We did have that conversation. 8 years ago. She changed the rules. She and I agreed on no kids 8 years ago. She then lied about birth control and put holes in the condoms we used to have sex. How the fuck is that me causing a problem? You sound like a delightful chap. She was my partner, now she isn't. Also, dude, regardless of where we are in our relationship, there's always respect for the women, not girls, that I'm with. I would not call my partner my girlfriend, because I don't like the term. As I mentioned in my post, we had the conversation 8 years ago, and as I've mentioned in other posts asking for advice, we've always spoken about being a child-free couple. My point here, if you read it with your peepers focused on the words, is that she made the decision to go off birth control without telling me at some point, I don't know when. After disagreeing on children ahead of us getting married, I started to use condoms when we had sex under the impression that this would be double protection, when it was actually no protection at all. So in answer to your final quip, it's not gone very well, but I don't need someone like you to say this sort of mad shit. OOP on dealing with vasectomy. He had to have a legal reason for needing one. OOP, I have visited my GP for a referral 3 times, 24, 26 and 29. The first 2 times I was denied due to my age and the idea that I might change my mind. Average waiting time, they said, can be between 6-9 months, but I don't know if that's a deterrent for men, as I was scheduled for my procedure 3 months after my approval. I am still going ahead with it. Update, October 16, 2024. Editor's note, edited out the first part of the update as it is a rehash of the original post. Update 4. My ex's parents have now got involved and have lumbered me with a court-ordered DNA test, or the option to lay child support and have no involvement. I have dug my heels in and said that everything she has done will constitute involvement from the police, and am trying to avoid legal battles as I have no money or means to support myself right now, let alone a child I never ever wanted. My parents are now asking me to reconsider my position, and I want scream every time they bring it up, as they're trying to find a positive, and have said it might be the best thing to ever happen to me, and it makes me physically sick every time I think about my life being ruined over someone else's deception. I cannot sleep. I cannot focus. I'm so scared. I have now had a vasectomy.